It's just like, you got the time that I think you got this one time this year, 99% of the time. Yeah. All right. Well, we're ready live. We'll get Chris to sit and we'll be ready to for order.
I'd like to say something. You talk? Okay.
Curtis is not in town. That's correct.
Yeah. Next door? Possibly still working.
Yeah.
All you need is a guitar. So, 5 minutes after 5, I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. We can have unfortunately, the people in the back, if, we're going to get you. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We have some presentations that we're going to go ahead and start off. First, we'll go with our roll call.
Morris.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Cottle.
Here.
Hassanov.
Here.
Great. All right. Our first presentation will be from Dominion Power, and I believe it's Carla?
Yes.
Yes, great. Right. You want to go ahead and start and give you full time and attention here.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. First of all, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, Everybody hear me okay? Okay, thank you. I am Carla Picard with Dominion Virginia Power, and I want to thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity and the time on the agenda tonight to talk about a new project. And I'm going to go through some slides and hopefully answer a lot of questions up front, but we've got plenty of time on the agenda, so we'll make sure we answer as many questions as we can in the time we have allotted. Now, I do have a number of Dominion team members here with me tonight. I won't introduce all of them, but we've got folks from our real estate group, our right-of-way and siting group, our planning engineering, as well as our community and local affairs representatives. So we've got a whole panel of folks that hopefully have been answering questions already, and they will help me answer any questions that I can't answer as we go along. I'll also mention as well, I'm sure we won't be able to answer questions from the audience.
Right, and that's what I just wanted to kind of expand on. That this setting here is for the town council. This is our work session agenda that we're getting first. This presentation that we do have lots of opportunities, obviously coming in the future. I know tomorrow night I believe there's one for just specifically Green Hill, not that it's limited to, but Green Hill, and then you have the one at Battlefield High School in September.
That's right. And actually, I was going to end my presentation by mentioning all the opportunities that we have coming up for the public to participate and get their questions answered.
Right.
And in addition, I have a stack of cards here that my colleagues will help us hand out. They've got our direct contact information. If folks want to work with us directly, there's an email address and a toll-free number. They can call. We're happy to come to additional HOA meetings, for example,
right,
and meet with folks directly.
Okay, great.
So lots of opportunities, and we are really at kind of the starting line for this project, if you will. We're at a preliminary step. We have identified a preliminary route that we want to start with for the transmission line, so I'll get to all of that in the slides. But I thought I should probably start the presentation by kind of setting the stage. And, I know for a lot of people, we don't give a whole lot of thought to our electricity. When we flip the switch, we hope the lights will come on. If they don't, that's a problem. And it's our job to think a lot deeper about it and make sure we've got the facilities in place to meet the demand, not just when you flip the switch today, but on down the road as new development and additional demand becomes a factor for us. So I'll dive right in.
Okay, thank you.
So as I mentioned, we have a planning group at Dominion. Their sole focus is on watching and monitoring our existing facilities and planning ahead, because obviously building new infrastructure is not something that happens overnight. So we have to make sure that we are constantly looking ahead, keeping an eye on areas of rapid growth. For example, when you see a population in a particular area double in a span of 10 years, that sets off the light bulb. pun intended, I guess. But one of the things I wanted to point out that maybe a lot of people wouldn't think of is, even though you can see a lot of the growth in this area, what you don't see is how the demand for electricity is growing in parallel. And actually, it's not parallel. During that same 10-year period where you've seen the population in town double, the demand for electricity has actually grown at an even steeper rate. So the demand for electricity has roughly tripled in that same time frame. So Haymarket is an area that we've definitely had our eye on. And as you can see from the third bullet there, obviously when you have population growth, some other advantages happen from an economic development standpoint. You have typically revenue growth, you have commercial growth like the new Starbucks, new Haymarket Starbucks, the Walmart, the Kohl's. So all these things tend to kind of happen together. And as part of that commercial growth, we're also seeing growth in what we're calling the high-tech sector, businesses that can tend to use more electricity than, say, a residential home or even a commercial store, for example, retail. And there is a local business that has substantial plans for growth at their existing facility. They notified us of their plans, and so we were able to factor that into our projections for what we see on the long-term horizon for the Haymarket area. So that's kind of the foundation of where we are today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we want to move forward and how we want to make sure that we can continue to deliver power safely and reliably long-term. So again, this is the part that probably most people don't think about every day, but we have existing transmission facilities, and again, the transmission lines deliver electricity over long distances. So this is how we get the power from where it's generated to your local substation where it's then delivered to homes and businesses. So our existing network or transmission grid of facilities, you can see are the purple lines on this chart here. So you've probably seen some of these transmission lines in and around Prince William County. But what we're seeing is the growth is happening in this area that I've kind of shaded with an oval in the Haymarket area. And hopefully one of the things you're noticing is that this growth area is not really in close proximity to those existing purple lines, which of course represent our existing transmission grid. So what that means is this area, the area of Haymarket, is currently being served by our low voltage distribution lines. And as you can see from the slide, the lines that serve this area are approximately 6 miles long. And as you think about it, these distribution lines that are serving the local area are coming from our substation in the Gainesville area. So the power has to pass through a lot of fairly heavily developed areas before it gets out to you, which means exposure, which means vulnerability. And so like I said, we've been keeping an eye on this situation. Because of the growth and where we are, we're seeing a tipping point where we need to take action to make sure we can continue to deliver power reliably for Haymarket. So let me change gears a little and talk about the solution. So what we're proposing is a two-phased solution. There's a short-term component and a longer-term component. The ultimate solution for Haymarket is to have transmission delivery, in other words, bulk power delivered directly to what we're calling the load center, where we're seeing the growth. So we need power delivered directly from that network to the Haymarket area. We want to build a local Haymarket substation so that all of those distribution lines that feed the homes and businesses in this area will be fed from your local substation instead of coming all the way from Gainesville. So from an exposure standpoint, that means instead of having a 6-mile line and a local feeder serving your home or your business here, you're going to have a much shorter line that's coming directly from the Haymarket area, from a local substation. So what that means for property owners, business owners in this area is reduced exposure, which translates to fewer outages and a shorter duration when outages do occur, because there's less line for us to, theoretically repair or reconnect. Okay? So the long-term solution is a transmission line that will feed a local Haymarket substation. But until we can get that line built, we also need a short-term or a near-term solution, and that's where we're planning to reinforce some of the existing distribution facilities. As you all know, actually right out in front of this building, we have an existing Dominion line, the power poles that run along the north side of Washington Street through town. And I want to show you what it's going to look like. We've actually done some simulations. We're working with a very reputable company actually based out of New Zealand called TrueScape. And so they are helping us develop simulations not just for the distribution work, but also for the transmission lines. And we're hoping very soon, definitely by the September 10th meeting, but hopefully sooner, we'll have more of these simulations that will help folks really see what these future facilities will look like compared to what's there today. I do have one of the simulations. These are still in draft form. I just got these images this morning. But I want to show you kind of the before and after of what we're proposing for the line in town here in Haymarket, okay? And then we'll talk more about the transmission facilities. Okay, so this is probably a picture that is familiar to most folks. You can see the streetscape project happening as well in the foreground. So you can see obviously the existing transmission lines. I'm sorry, thank you. The existing distribution lines that run along, again, that's the north side of Washington Street. And I want to point out as well, the Dominion distribution lines are the wires along the top of the pole that run through the crossarm. You can also see kind of a dark, heavier wire that runs about a third of the way down the pole. That is another utility that has co-located on our poles. So it could be Verizon or Comcast or something like that. But I want to point that out because we'll talk about that in a minute. So here's what they look like today. What we're proposing is what we call a double build. So we're basically going to add a second rack up top that's going to carry an express line. So today the distribution line that's serving town, it's serving everybody along the way. What we're going to add is an express line that will come directly into Haymarket. So it'll be a second line, but it's dedicated to Haymarket, okay? So here's what it'll look like. So we're basically adding kind of an upper deck, if you will, to the existing poles. And I just want to caveat that the actual poles that are there today aren't tall enough, and they're not engineered for this upper deck. So we're actually going to put in a new pole that's adjacent to the existing pole with that upper deck on. We're going to transfer the wires over and then remove the pole that's there today. The only hiccup in that process will be, as I mentioned, the other carrier that's co-located on our facilities. We need them to transfer their facilities as well. And I do have Denise Stevens, who is our project manager from the distribution side. She's waving. So she can answer any questions that you might have as far as construction and what that might look and feel like. But I'll back up and show that to you again. So, sorry, I went the wrong way. So here's what's there today, and this is the new configuration. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to shift gears again and talk about the transmission solution. Again, our goal was to try to find a route. No easy task through this area, but try to find a route so we could get a line from that Gainesville area in our existing grid over to Haymarket so we can serve this new local substation, okay? So we started with a study area, and actually I'll show you on another map, we did look at another alternative that is outside of this area and eliminated that fairly quickly because of a complex assortment of constraints. Up in that area, there's obviously the Manassas Battlefield, another state park, and then an assortment of different conservation areas and just some challenges from a routing standpoint on the northern side. So you can see from this study area, we really kind of focused our attention on this corridor along 66, and We have an assortment of different alternatives that I'll get to, but I want to kind of focus the discussion on the preliminary route that we've sort of narrowed our focus to as a starting point. And I'll show it to you, and then we can also zoom in and take a closer look at what that means through the town of Haymarket. So I do apologize. It's a little tricky to see with the lighting on the screen, but over on the right-hand side of this image, you can see the purple lines, which again represent the existing transmission lines that we have there today. And you can probably, well, that helps. Yep. Thanks, Charlie. So these purple lines, you all, I'm sure, are familiar with 234 as it comes to 66 right at this intersection in Gainesville. And there are like 6 galvanized steel poles on either side of 234 right there. So that's the existing transmission corridor that we want to tap off of and head west to Haymarket. So as orientation, that's where we're starting our project, and that's what you see, those purple lines there. So the red line that you can see that's literally kind of connecting at a T with the existing transmission lines would jog over to the west and then come across 234 and then basically parallel along the southern side of the railroad, the Norfolk Southern Railroad, through kind of an industrial section initially, and then of course we're behind Virginia Gateway as we come around kind of behind the Lowe's right there. Then we would cross over 29, and again, we really tried to think about the future development of a lot of these parcels, so you can see it kind of makes some odd jogs and does a little bit of a zigzag there coming into the town of Haymarket. But we do make our way back over to the railroad and would cross back over to the southern side of the railroad and follow that southern edge of the railroad pretty much almost to 15. And then the line would cross over 15, cross back over to the northern side of the railroad where we anticipate having a substation location. And of course, that location is not final, but for the purpose of having 2 points on the map to connect, this is our planned location at this time. So if there are no questions at this point, I'll zoom in and we'll take a closer look at this routing as it goes through Haymarket.
So we've probably all got lots of questions.
Oh, well, and that's fine.
I didn't know if you want to wait till you're done and our...
Yeah, let's do that, and then, I can go forward or backwards as we need to. Okay. Okay, so here I've zoomed in to a portion of the line for reference over in the top left-hand corner of the screen. That's Jefferson Street as it crosses over the railroad. So that's in the top left corner. So you're looking at on the top section of the screen, you're looking at Green Hill Crossing, and then the railroad, and then you can see what we've done here with this map, and we have big copies of these maps in the back of the room as well. But what you're seeing there, the red line would be the center line of the route, and the yellow shading area, that represents the entire width of the right-of-way that we would need to clear for the safe operation and maintenance of the transmission lines. So the width of that right-of-way, as we have it illustrated, is 120 feet wide. Now, depending on the type of structure that we ultimately use, the actual right-of-way that we need could vary from 100 to 120 feet in width. But, as you can imagine, with most things, there are trade-offs. If we go with taller structures, the lines would be more narrowly arranged, so we could have a more narrow right-of-way. Okay? If we went with shorter structures, they would have to be a little wider, so we would need the wider right-of-way. Okay? So it's kind of a taller or wider option there. And we can talk about structure types in just a minute. But so what we're showing is 120 feet in width through this area. And we like co-locating with existing linear facilities where we can. That's actually part of the code for routing. So existing energy corridors, rail, transportation, highways, that kind of thing. Those are seen as preferable options for routing linear facilities. So, and if Norfolk Southern will allow us, we'd like to overlap our easement with their easement to whatever extent possible, because that would minimize the amount of clearing that would be required for the line. So that's something we've approached them about. We don't have a final answer on that yet. Okay, so this is a preliminary look. I'm going to scoot to the west a little bit with the next shot. Okay, so here you can see Jefferson Street has moved down to kind of the lower third of the screen. We're shifting towards the west now, and you can start to see a little bit more of the commercial area of Haymarket. And you'll also notice, obviously, the area south of the railroad right through here is a resource protection area because you've got the North Fork, which you can kind of see a little more clearly on this screen. That's something that we're very sensitive to, we're very aware of. We have a lot of experience working in and around wetland areas. We do work very closely with a number of state agencies that offer guidance and conditions for us, and we adhere very closely to those conditions for working in this type of environment. Okay, I'm going to move a little bit further west now, and you'll see where the line crosses over 15 and then heads into our proposed substation location, which would be just south of John Marshall Highway. And this is, you can tell how old my map is because Walmart isn't on there yet. I know. So this is no longer a pasture of dirt. It is now Starbucks and Kohl's and Walmart. And but yeah, so that's for location. We would be kind of across the street and a little more west of that shopping center. Okay. Now, as I promised, this is a very small map, and I apologize. We tried to get the whole thing on one page for you. And again, we do have a large version of this map that's available on the back table. But this kind of gives you a quick glimpse of the different alternatives that we looked at. The purple line, as I mentioned, that kind of skirts along the state park on the north side of 66 and then runs through the golf course, which, of course, is through a flood zone. And then it's very hard to see on this map, I apologize, but there's a red route as well that runs just parallel to the southern border of 66. And as you know, there's some housing developments that are built right up against 66 that would, you know, we couldn't even get 100 feet through there, let alone 120 feet between the homes and the VDOT right-of-way. So a number of constraints on all these different alternatives that we did look at. And I want to shift gears now again to the structure types. I promised we'd talk a little bit more about structure types. So what we're seeing here on this screen is one of the potential structure types. This is a relatively common structure type for us for a double circuit 230 kilovolt line, which is what we'd be proposing here. Double circuit simply means there are two lines on each one structure. You've got three arms on one side, which hold three phases of one circuit, and then three arms on the other side, which hold another circuit. So the benefit, of course, of having a double circuit line is you automatically have two lines serving your ultimate destination. So if something were to happen, if there was a fault on one of the lines, you've got your backup already in place. It's built-in redundancy without any additional footprint or facilities. So this particular structure, typically we can build this type of structure in a 100-foot right-of-way, but as I mentioned, there are options, and one of the other structures that we are looking at would be about 20 feet lower in height, but would require the full 120-foot wide right-of-way. Another option that is definitely worth considering and worth discussion as we look to the public for input is the color of the poles. These are what we call galvanized steel, which is basically the same material that a lot of the guardrails are, for example, it's kind of a dull light gray, and we find that this structure works particularly well. For example, if we're running along 66 and what you're seeing behind the structures is predominantly sky, versus through the wooded area, we may recommend a weathering steel, which is what you're probably used to seeing as the dark brown structure, which tends to blend a little better with a wooded background. So some different options to think about there. And we're almost done. We're almost to the Q&A part. Real quickly, I did want to touch on our target schedule. I know I've got a lot of information up here, but in a nutshell, we've got a number of opportunities coming up. Tonight, obviously, is August 25th. We're here with you all for Town Council. We will be back in this building on September the 8th for the Planning Commission meeting, and we hope that we'll have some public participation at that meeting as well. We are looking for feedback, and we're looking forward to sharing the information there. And then, of course, Dominion is hosting an open house just up the road at Battlefield High School. That event is September the 10th, and we will have all of our subject matter experts available at that meeting to answer questions one-on-one with property owners. We'll have the maps and several of our routing folks to talk directly with property owners and answer any specific questions they have about their property. And then we do intend to file an application later this fall with the State Corporation Commission. And I've kind of drawn a dotted line there because I want to talk about that state process, because we really, Dominion wants to gather as much information as we can so we can put together a good recommendation in our application to the State Corporation Commission. But ultimately, they will do their own assessment. They spend a year or more studying everything that we've submitted. They have their own engineering consultants. They have their own environmental consultants. They will send their own teams up here to evaluate everything we've submitted, and then they will ultimately tell us what to build. So again, we try to gather as much information as we can so we can put together a good, solid recommendation, but they are the final decision maker, and I want to make sure I touch on how the public can participate in that process as well. So the bottom of this schedule, I wanted to make sure everybody was clear on what we're planning as we get into construction and ultimately when we want to try to energize the project. And our deadline is the spring of 2017. So that's where we're headed. That would mean starting construction in early 2016. So you can see there's quite a process between now and when the first bulldozer digs the first scoop of dirt. Okay, so let me talk just for a quick second about the SEC process, and then I'll open it up for questions. Now, I realize there's a ton of information on this page, but what I really wanted to highlight are the green boxes. Those green boxes are all the different opportunities for the public to participate and have a voice in this process. At this point, we are, as I said, in the very beginning stages of this process, and we are eager to hear from the public and hear some of the issues or concerns or questions that folks have about the project. And then, as I said, ultimately we plan to file our application with the SEC, and there are multiple opportunities in the SEC review process for the public and localities to participate in that process before a decision is made. And with that, I will open it up to questions, and I can refer back to any of the images that we've seen along the way.
Okay. All right. Who would like to...
Can you turn the light back on, please? Thank you. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for coming here. Just briefly, because this is just in the really early stages, you're looking for the public feedback.
Correct.
But yet still you gave the public only one option. Let me clarify it for you. You are responsible to the residents in this community. And the only comments that I get back from talking to the residents is, why is this the only option that they were presented with? So if now you're looking for the public's feedback, how then can you look for the public's feedback without giving them other options? And I would suggest that you would take it back to whoever is responsible that the best way that they could have approached this was to show the map with the 3 options and give it to the residents with the explanations why you could not go with A, B, and why you're going with C. So please take it back to the relevant authorities as to why you would. Basically, you're saying you need the public. This is how I interpret it as a resident of this community. You want our feedback, but you're not giving us any options. You want our feedback, but you don't really want our feedback because you're the big Dominion. That is how I'm reading into it as a resident. Now, as a person of the council here, I looked at it and looked at the different diagrams and studied areas that you guys have, and what I counted on this proposal is crossing over 4 major roads and 4 portions of the railroad. And if you were to go via the route of the southern side of I-66, if space allows it, you would cross over 4 major roads and 0 portions of the railroad. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. So my question is, are you sure this is the only option on the table that you could present to the residents and to the council?
Okay, and I appreciate that. And one of the things that I'm hoping might be productive going forward, and it's one of the things we're looking at, is a way to show the different constraints that we have to look at. As you mentioned, road crossings, that's one of them, conservation easements, forested wetlands, residences, planned development, residential, commercial, whatever, cultural assets, historical assets. So there are a whole host of different constraints that we have to look at and weigh. Some part of that is quantitative. We can count acres of forested wetlands, for example, but some part of that is unfortunately subjective. Residential versus wetlands, or residential versus historic, or it's as much an art as a science. And I'm hoping that if we can provide more of that evaluation and show some of the different constraints that we typically look at when trying to route infrastructure, that might at least be informative as we go forward.
I think what you guys are doing is really important to our community. I think the concept is good. I think the transmission line to be built, it's a really good idea, and it's really admirable that you guys look so far ahead to supply what is going to be needed for our community. But there's one question that lingers, and it's probably in the mind of every landowner, especially those that will see the structure.
Right.
How will this affect my land value? So how can Dominion come back to say to the residents, these are the reasons how this could affect your land value? Because that's going to be one of the questions that you hear from the residents. As a matter of fact, the way I found out about this project was a resident whose property backs up to the railroad called me to say, "Hey, Chris, I'm moving." I'm like, "Why?" That's how I found out. Well, I heard that they're doing the power lines. And that's when I found out of the proposal. So that's going to be one of the questions that's going to be in the minds of almost every resident as they look up and see this structure. It is not that we, as residents, we sometimes don't think about flipping the light switch and not thinking where it comes from. We understand and appreciate the work that you guys are doing, but I think there is still some work to be done. So, and let me just finish off by saying you're looking for feedback from the community. But what feedback can deter you from running it along the houses that are in the town of Haymarket? What feedback could really cause you to not run it there? Is there anything that as a resident I could ever say to Dominion to stop them from doing it? Because if not, then are you really looking for our feedback?
That's fair. So let me start by saying we are genuine in our effort to get feedback and constructive input on not just the route that we're proposing, but if there are variations or adjustments that need to be made for whatever reason, whether it's a family cemetery that we may not be aware of because it's not on our GIS layers, for example, or planned business use. Or I just worked on a project where we had routed new right-of-way through a parcel that, when we drove by it just looked wooded. We weren't aware of any plans until the property owner came and said, I've been working for years to build my dream home there. I just put the foundation in. So we can't know everything. So we're genuinely interested in learning everything we can about the character, the features, the plans for this area, so that we can reasonably minimize the impact on property owners, business owners. The unfortunate reality of routing any type of infrastructure is there's really no way to do it where there are no impacts. So the challenge is to minimize the impacts as much as we can.
But yet still minimizing I live here at Longstreet Commons, and I walk out my front door and I look and I see I-66. If I were to get out, and this is where I really have to have some form of understanding for the people who live on Green Hill and the areas that are affected. Because if I were to get out of my house and look down on I-66 and see these power lines, I would not have a problem. You know why? I-66 is busy. It's commercial. It is, I guess commercial is the only word. So if I see those poles along 66, I would not have a problem with it, because it goes with the territory. But then to put it on another side where there's residential, between two residential units, I just think more research needs to be done. And Mr. Mayor, I yield.
Okay. All right. We'll kind of go around that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That'll be all right. Maybe you have anything?
I'm sorry I was late.
That's
Pam Swingford. My also concern with that is not only is it residential, but there's wetlands that we're going through. We're not even considering. It's almost like we're the small town, so let's pick on them because they won't have any power. I mean, frankly, that's how I feel. I know the people in Green Hill Crossing do not want it. I have not spoken to one person who wants this, not one. And it affects our property, it affects our small town feel. I mean, we already have all of this growing up all around us anyways, and we're trying to stay small. We've promised that we're going to keep this a small walking town, a small community that's friendly. And power lines are not part of that. Protected wetlands, those are. I mean, we already have the railroad track that goes through. That's almost the charm of the town. It was a railroad town at one time. Mm-hmm. And my question is, I know Middleburg fought power lines. Is it the same power lines that Middleburg fought and won against having going through their lands? Because I know they've been up against Dominion too. Are these the same power lines? Is this the same project that
No.
you guys just keep trying to find another way through?
No, these lines are
It's a whole different
specifically to
project.
serve Haymarket. This isn't a thoroughfare or a pass-through where we're delivering power to some faraway place. These are just lines to serve Haymarket.
Is it to serve Haymarket or to pass through Haymarket?
No, it's to serve Haymarket.
But the studied area is not Haymarket. Your studied area is not. This is 20169 Haymarket. But this power line is not to serve Haymarket. Your study area involved this entire region of if you go back, you will see your study area involves everything over by Gainesville. That's where your study area. Look at the area that you're saying is your study area. That is not Haymarket. It may be Haymarket 20169, but how does it serve the town of Haymarket by coming through the town and putting it opposite Walmart?
Well, this is our study area for routing the line, but the end destination, recall, is this area of Haymarket that is currently served by distribution lines. So the new substation that we're planning, all of these distribution lines that serve the town of Haymarket and the broader Haymarket area would originate at that substation. So this is a new source of power for the Haymarket area.
Yes, but page 1, item 1 said that it's doubled, or the number of people has doubled, but that's not necessarily the town of Haymarket. It is that general study area. See where I'm going with this? Is like, you could go and say that, hey, that general study area, the population has doubled, but that's not necessarily where you're going with the substation. So there is a language that you're using that comes off a bit deceptive. Does that make sense? I would like for you to come to say, in the town of Haymarket, what's it, 1 mile by 1 mile? That 1 mile by 1 mile section, this is the study that we've done with the additional of homes. And that is why we're proposing to come to benefit the town of Haymarket. Or then even widen it to include Green Hill and the other communities nearby. So I just think that in the language there is some deception. Because your study area doesn't match with the opening words, and it certainly doesn't match with why we're coming through Haymarket.
We'll try to continue with the questions. Pam, did you have any further ones?
No, I mean, my concern is we're going through housing areas. I mean, surely there must be other plans out there that can go through property that has not been developed yet. I mean, it's one thing to purchase a home knowing the power lines are there. It's another thing to have purchased a completely developed area and then have somebody come through in protected wetlands through the middle of housing that, I mean, we're talking, it's your backyard. I mean, it's not that I'm seeing it out there in the distance. It is literally going to separate, like, one neighbor from another neighbor is going to be a power plant. I mean, it's a power pole, the power plant down there. And then you have the concerns about the substation and emissions. And, you know, we haven't even gone down that route of what that means, sitting over there on undeveloped land. But there just has to be other routes that there's nothing being offered to us. It feels like you're coming to us and saying, here's the plan. We hope you like it. And we were caught unaware. I really do feel we were caught unaware about it.
Okay. I would be curious if you could expand the map, because it seems like we are focused on this. Are there other options coming from the west, coming east to serve that area? Number one. And it seems like obviously you're providing the power, obviously okay for Haymarket as it stands, that with this is the anticipation of a next growth, is my understanding of it. So when this substation is actually in there, is somehow or another you're going to backfeed these homes, and this might be a technical question, to this area where you're no longer providing the power through the Gainesville substation? Would that be a good, fair assessment? Look over here, and I think we got somebody willing to answer it. Yes. Yes. So it will be a backfeed from Haymarket. You would stop the power feed from Gainesville, and it would only be from the new transmission coming there.
The distribution planner is not here this evening.
Uh-huh.
But it's my understanding that is the plan. That substation west of Haymarket would pick up the feed that the circuits, as you indicated, presently come out of Gainesville substation. They would then be fed from the Haymarket direction.
So you would literally cut off the lines. It would be only from the one area, but using the transmission.
Ties between the two stations, there would be a feed from Gainesville, a feed from Haymarket. It provides more operational flexibility.
Right.
In the event that stores were to be lost in Gainesville, then the load could be picked up from the Haymarket area, and if the stores were to be lost at the Haymarket station, it could still be picked up back in Gainesville.
But Gainesville is still the primary source. In other words, you lose Gainesville, you're going to lose Haymarket substation. No. So somehow or another, besides the backfeed on the line itself, but
We're talking two different things.
okay.
The lines
Can you get on the microphone, because that's
Yeah,
not
I'm sorry,
picked up
yeah.
on any of this.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe it's possible you can come to the mic.
The lines that she shows up on the screen right now. I'm sorry, I should introduce myself. My name's Mark Gill. I'm a transmission planner.
Okay.
Those are the distribution facilities that come out of the Gainesville substation. the source to the Haymarket substation will be at the transmission level. That would be transmission lines, and those are networked differently. I mean, they have sources all over.
So probably understanding this, if you were to expand that map, is there anything from the west that could come east?
Warrenton.
Or some?
And Warrenton's way to the south. We have no facilities that are as close as what we're trying to tap into and extend to the Haymarket area. We do not have 230 kV transmission to the west that we could bring into this area.
Yeah, it would just seem like with the growth would be going west, that if you brought it in from the west, you would then take all that new growth that would be from 55, west. That's the reason why I wonder why we're dealing with this going,
We're seeing the growth in this area that's taxing the distribution system. The large, what you refer to, technical or tech sector customer. That's driving a lot of this. That's going to exceed the capacity of the distribution system. Hence the need to bring another source into the area, and that will have additional benefits of being able to pull these feeders back, and the Haymarket, the town, will be sourced out of a much closer location.
And
Another,
go ahead.
and sorry, coming back over. I see your point. It kind of makes sense visually if you had another source coming from the west where there's less population,
Right.
might be easier to carve a path theoretically. The challenge with that is, as Mark mentioned, the existing grid facilities that we have kind of developed, in parallel with 95, because that's generally where the population growth is. So our existing facilities serve the areas that were developed, over the last several decades. So the Haymarket and some of the more rural or bedroom communities that have been developed, as you kind of head west, we just don't have facilities today to serve those areas. So we have to come off of the existing system to get new facilities out into those more remote areas.
And is there, or down the line, can these poles be doubled up again? I mean, in other words, is that the way you continue to grow with your transmission lines? As more service is needed, you would then just keep adding to this?
Well, we're trying to plan ahead for the future by making it a double circuit up front. So that capacity, as Mark mentioned, it's like having two separate lines coming from our existing network to feed that Haymarket substation. So any additional development would be pretty far down the road because this is a very robust solution. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Carla, just real quick. I think you were asking if we would stack another set of circuits on top of it.
Well, or just somehow or another, if you're running out, you already got this infrastructure in place now, and now you need to add more. Where do you add it? I would assume you would add it to the poles.
No, we would not stack.
So what would the alternative be then?
Yeah. So how would you
Where
get?
would you get it then?
The Haymarket now needed, the substation needed more than what your
So then
capacity.
why don't we start further west to begin with? Why is that not even an option?
Needs of Haymarket and that customer for quite some time. The capacity of the 230 kV line is quite a bit higher than the distribution circuits.
Just for clarity,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to ask, how far west does your jurisdiction go? I mean, maybe that will help answer some of these questions, because we are looking at we'd like to see other alternatives from the north, south, and west. So, how far is your jurisdiction, how far is Novak? And I apologize for
No, absolutely.
Okay.
That's one of my questions too.
I'll
So.
get to that, to where he's going.
Yeah. Well, and they're really so we could build infrastructure through Novak service territory. That's not an issue. We've got plenty of projects that run that way. It's really more a matter of connecting into the existing grid system. So Novak, for example, is one of our biggest customers in this area. So when we're talking about a new supply of power to the Haymarket area, that would serve Dominion customers right away. But there's also the future capacity for Novec to tap off of that new line and serve their customers from the Haymarket area as well, which is advantageous for Novec for all the same reasons it would help us and would help the folks that live in this area to have a source of power that's located here in Haymarket versus coming all the way from Gainesville. So routing through, Novec or Rappahannock Electric Co-op's territory, that's not the challenge. The challenge is having access to the existing transmission grid, because that's where the power flows are. That's where the power is already flowing between our generation facilities and the end users. So that it's the transmission lines, which is kind of like our superhighway for power to get delivered from where it's generated to your local substation. And up until this point, Haymarket hasn't had a local substation. You've kind of been a spur off of the Gainesville substation and how the Gainesville area has been served up until now. So this project is really about proposing, we're kind of acknowledging, okay, Haymarket has grown, the Haymarket area, including the town, has grown to a point where we need to have a long-term solution in place that's going to ensure better reliability for the town and the surrounding Haymarket area long-term. So that's a local substation.
The actual substation itself, do you have like a contract purchase for that land? Or do you know?
We do not.
So it's a proposed private owner that owns the property that...
It's a planned commercial development that we would co-locate with,
Okay, gotcha.
hopefully.
All right. Matt, we keep on going around the room here.
I guess the biggest question I have, you said you could pull out of Warrenton? There's a substation currently in Warrenton?
There is a substation in Warrenton, and that would be one of the closest facilities that would be west and, as Mark said, kind of south of here.
All right, I guess the only question that I have to follow up, do you have a study you could give us as a town council that we could show the citizens of what coming from Warrenton would look like? Because again, if you're proposing to build a substation west of town and looking at this current proposal, which is snaking all through Gainesville, through the wetlands, through between neighborhoods, and you look at what's west, which is a lot of open land, I would just like to know where the study to show, I guess in other words what I'm saying, you have four options. The citizens of the town, let's say in theory, voted, 400 wants this, do the citizens have the ultimate say, or is it Dominion Power has the ultimate say?
Actually, it's the State Corporation Commission that has the ultimate say.
I understand.
We're kind of fact gatherers.
I understand, but you're going to, I would think, if you've got Dominion Power, Little Town and Haymarket, whichever plan goes forward, I would surmise that probably they're going to side with the bigger group of people than the smaller, would be my guess.
Well, their responsibility is twofold. It's, number one, first and foremost, to determine whether or not the project we're proposing serves the greater good of the good of the community as a whole, and whether or not that project, that infrastructure, the good, is worth the cost and worth the cost to Dominion's ratepayers, because that's ultimately who pays for the project. So their first responsibility is to determine the need for the project, and then they go about determining the route. And certainly our testimony is part of what they consider. It's a first step, but as I mentioned, they routinely hire their own environmental consultants to go out and explore the area and provide their own assessment, and they may or may not agree with Dominion. And there is, as I showed on that flow chart, there are multiple opportunities where the SEC will seek comment from the community.
Right. So I guess my biggest thing, I would just like to see the study coming from Warrenton and what that would look like. And I appreciate the position you're in. Okay, sitting down there with people, I'm sure you don't have all the answers as well. I appreciate you coming, but being a resident, we have to do due diligence for the citizens of the town to make sure that we're as least impacted as possible. So I hope you appreciate that. So that's all.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Well said, yes.
Well, thank you, Carla, for coming, and the rest of your team. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to try to keep it limited because I know we have plenty of opportunity to comment on it. I appreciate that table you showed us earlier. I think our council member, Chris Morris, said it best. Not enough alternatives are shown in your presentation. And I would like to see, well, let's just say that this is the preliminary bout. This is just the beginning of a long process, and you really need to put up those alternatives. I've worked on EISs and EAs in the transportation industry. I understand the screening process, alternatives analysis, MIS, all that stuff. I mean, you really need to educate the public, number one, about your different alternatives. What are the different routes? I'd like to see north, south, east, and west. And what are the costs? What are those screening criteria? Whether they're subjective or objective. And lay it out so they can understand how it impacts them. And frankly, we have to see the costs and benefits of this as well. Now, I would be so skeptical as to say the $65 million is probably the cheapest alternative. Right? I mean, I think everybody else would as well. So I think you need to be fair to the public, especially for our folks here in the town. Lay it all out, as Chris has said, and I appreciate that, Pam and others, and educate us as to what these alternatives entail. What are the consequences of these different routes? And when you said about the railroad, I happen to be in the railroad industry for 38 years for my career, and you're going to have yourself a challenge, because if I was working for NS, I would want to have enough of the right-of-way for a second track for the future development. So now that's even going to give you a shorter or narrower footprint from which to work with, because you're hemmed in by their right-of-way, right, and the wetlands, and it's even going to be more of a challenge. So I don't know if you've talked to them about that, whether they've commented on any of this yet.
I don't think we've gotten feedback from them. We have had a preliminary conversation with a contact at Norfolk Southern, but we don't have any sort of resolution.
Okay. So let me ask a few more questions then.
Sure.
All right, so if you build this project as you envision, how long would it take before you would have to expand on it? How long do you project that this project would handle the demand? Based on everything you know and based on all of the projections for the county, for Fauquier County, if in fact you go further west. I think that's an important answer that you'd like to see. At least I would like to see that.
Okay.
Okay. Visuals. We've done a lot of visuals in the industry, and it would be very helpful for the community to see what those visuals look like compared to where they are. The topography has a big difference.
Yes.
Being close, maybe the different types of fixtures you're talking about. I like the idea that you said the lower you go, right, the wider it is, which is even a bigger challenge for you. So I think the visuals are very important so people can understand what it is they're looking at. Like Councilmember Morris said, if it was on 66, it wouldn't be as big a deal. But now you're on the backdrop behind homes, behind a very, I guess, bucolic kind of a location with the woods and the water. So what would that look like?
Right.
So I think, you've really got to do a little bit more homework on this. You've got to expand this presentation, be more informative, and provide those alternatives so people can better understand what you're trying to do here. And does it really benefit them or not? Just give me one more minute. I think that you're going to be meeting on the 8th with the Planning Commission.
Right.
I think you're going to have a lot of questions, so be prepared. And if you don't lay it all out like I just proposed, I think you're going to be very challenged. And then when you get to that September 10th meeting, it's even going to be worse. So please, do yourself a favor, expand your presentation, get some more information in there so that we all can help you make the informed decision when the SDC takes a look at it. And we're going to definitely comment. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm just looking at everybody nodding.
Yes.
Good. Good.
I do have more questions, but I want to try to just leave it at that for now. And thank you again for coming tonight, and appreciate your time.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate the time on the agenda to give this a first pass and get your feedback. And I trust my teammates have been taking copious notes for me with all the questions and feedback that we've gotten. And I appreciate your help in helping us improve the information that we're delivering. And I'll just close by...
We still have one other person. Sorry,
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Yeah.
I apologize.
No problem. I'll keep this short since a lot of my concerns have already been voiced in that. But a couple technical questions, I guess, when things have come up and you're mentioning. Is there any plans at all to have a power generation facility anywhere nearby this new substation? When you start talking about power generation facilities, that just brought that question to mind.
I'm not aware of any generation plans for this area. I'm going to look to Mark, the planner, to see if he is aware of...
Okay, that's fine. I wasn't either, but when you start talking about them, that just brought it to mind. The other thing is, as you mentioned, the train tracks and that, for the last 10 years, there's been all sorts of plans of widening them and putting in a commuter train. That hasn't gone very far.
The
But
VRE.
The VRE is
Yes.
supposed to be coming to Haymarket one day if the financing gets approved and such stuff. And
We have heard
so
rumblings.
that concerns me also with even more space being needed for that. And not just wiping out some of the woods, or some of the wetlands, but all the wetlands between two communities. And a smaller thing is, I've been by high performance power lines before, and a lot of the larger ones snap, crackle, and pop all throughout the day. At this voltage level, will they do that? Will people that live nearby have that noise in addition to the site issues? And can anyone answer that?
I'm not the engineer. I don't even play one on TV, but I work very closely with the engineering group, and what I have learned in my tenure with Dominion is there is sometimes sort of a low buzz or hum that you can hear, especially if there's moisture in the air. If you're hearing louder cracking, crackling, that kind of thing, that can be indicative that there is a problem with the wire itself. Each phase of the wire is actually bundled wires, and so if one of those wires becomes frayed, that can cause that crackling. So we actually have a whole host of ways that we monitor lines now using LiDAR and other technology so that we can scan the lines, and we have much better technology available so that we can patrol and find those issues earlier and correct the problem. Because obviously if you have a fray or something like that that's causing that noise, it's also inhibiting the performance of those circuits. So it's in our interest to address those problems as quickly as possible.
Probably less of a snap, crackle, and pop, but definitely a hum that the closest residents would probably hear.
I would generally agree with that characterization.
Okay. We have two other questions, I think. Chris, you had one more.
Yes.
And then Joe, and we just have to watch your time because we did start a few minutes late, but we got our VDOT after this. So.
to the best of your knowledge, is there a health risk?
It's a great question. It's a question that we hear commonly. I'm also not going to pretend to be a medical expert, but we do have a whole host of resources available on our website. Generally, there are no conclusive findings that there are any health risks related to transmission lines or substations. But again, I would encourage anyone who's interested to visit the links on our website. We try to link directly to the most reputable sources for information, the Virginia Department of Health, the National Cancer Institute, for example. So
as far as you know, the answer is no?
Correct.
It's not definitive, meaning no one will claim one way or the other. That's right.
Okay. Joe?
I'm sorry, while Steve was speaking, I thought of one more question. Most of our folks don't understand power generation and the heat associated with that. So they're going to ask you, I think, why couldn't these lines be buried? Okay, as opposed to avoid the visuals. So
Okay.
I think I know the answer to that because I did work in an electric environment. But do you know the answer to that and why, or is that something you would need to get some research on?
I can answer that. As you might imagine, that's also a fairly common question that we get. I'll try really hard to make this as succinct as possible. So we've talked already about our high voltage system, which is the transportation for bulk power. That's how we deliver a lot of electrons from where they're generated to the local substation. Then there are distribution lines, which are lower voltage lines, 12 kV, for example. Yeah, so those lines deliver the electrons at a lower voltage to your homes and businesses. Now, those distribution lines, we try to put those underground because you have a higher frequency of outages. So, like, for example, in your neighborhood, you probably have some of those green boxes on somebody's front lawn because a lot of those lines are underground because we want to reduce the frequency of outages. With transmission lines, you're talking about much higher voltages, but you're also talking about not just one street or one neighborhood that would be impacted by an outage, but you're talking about an entire substation. If that transmission line were to go out, that substation and tens of thousands of customers would be without power until we could restore that transmission line. So for transmission, we don't have a very high frequency of outages. We maintain these wide rights-of-way so that we can protect the lines, and we do a pretty good job with that. It's very rare for a transmission line to be out of service. We're more concerned about the outage duration because, again, we've got thousands of people without power until we can get that line re-energized. So if the lines are up in the air, they are air-cooled, which is, I think, where you were headed, but they're also much easier for us to access. We've got bucket trucks all over the system and trained linemen that can have that line repaired and back in service very quickly. If it's underground, there has to be excavation. Typically, we have to bring in specialists because unlike the low voltage system where we have about a little more than a third of our system underground, at the high voltage levels, we only have about 1% of our facilities underground, and that's for a reason. And that's actually very common across the U.S. and in Europe and most places.
So then it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. It's not preferred for operational reasons and because it has a substantial impact on the cost. And again, it's not that we don't want to spend the money, but ultimately the State Corporation Commission, remember one of those things I talked about, one of their responsibilities is it needed? Is it a prudent expense for all ratepayers to bear?
Okay.
If undergrounding is a visual benefit just for this particular area, there's a lot of precedent to indicate that the SEC is not going to be as favorable.
Interesting cost-benefit analysis.
Yes, it certainly would.
Do you have any closing remarks you mentioned you'd like to say?
Thank you very, very much for your time. And I have these cards with my contact information if anyone wants to reach out to us directly. for meetings or future
Just for
opportunities.
record, did you all already met with the Somerset community, right? The neighboring?
Well, no, we weren't invited.
Oh, I see.
We did reach out to Somerset Crossing, and we've met with the president of their board,
Okay.
but we were not invited to the meeting of the residents.
Okay, and tomorrow night is at Green Hill Crossing.
That's right.
For here.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you
Yes,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure, we're going to take just like a 3-minute recess here, and then we'll come right into our VDOT. Thank you.
What time do you anticipate us being done?
Probably
So can you win this prize?
Hey, Jennifer, we live? Jen? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order at 6:20. Take it, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. If we could please have a little bit quiet in the background there.
I can whistle.
Chief?
Sergeant of Arms, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, VDOT, for coming out. We'll go ahead and give her. I'm sorry, I didn't know your first name.
My name is Christiana Briganti Dunn. And I'm not a huge fan of microphones, so hopefully this will pick me up, and if not, I'll just speak really loudly.
Okay.
So I work as the design build project manager for the Department of Transportation. I do go by Tina, so shout out my name if you need to get my attention.
Okay.
I understand that you would have all received some kind of handout already in advance of this meeting. So we wanted to give you just a very quick briefing on how we came to the DDI as now our current preferred alternative. This is a design-build project for which we went through a 2-phase selection process and procurement, whereby we shortlisted 3 qualified design-build teams, and then each of those 3 shortlisted firms were given an RFP with a lot of criteria and requirements for how to build an interchange that would serve its purpose and need. We do allow for innovation to occur as part of a design-build procurement process, and 2 out of the 3 offers did come to VDOT requesting consideration for the diverging diamond interchange concept, or what we call the DDI. So we did have to ask, well, what merit does it have? Because we had studied it already and had excluded it from consideration when we could not get the geometry to fit between the 2 adjacent intersections between Heathcote and Route 55 at a 50-mile-an-hour design speed. This particular offer, the Lane RDA team came to us and said, well, if we could lower the design speed to 40 miles per hour, we could actually make all of the geometry work and have this still function as a DDI, and we can do even better than the original DDI concept by adding, for instance, a spur ramp that would allow for the westbound 66 off-ramp movement to have a dedicated phase at a traffic signal to allow them free access into the dual lefts to go on to westbound Heathcote, which is an improvement over the original DDI concept. It eliminates a very dangerous weaving condition and will help provide emergency vehicles access directly to the hospital through signalized maneuvers. So that is one substantial improvement from this DDI concept over the original one. Another one is the extended weaving lengths provided in particular from Route 55 heading northbound and then onto eastbound 66. That distance has been improved so that weaving can occur more safely because there's now greater distance in which to make that maneuver. And then also with the lowered speeds, we can also expect a considerable improvement in safety as well. So we have a couple of videos, one of which is actually produced by the Federal Highway Administration. If you don't mind sitting with us for about 9.5 minutes. We think it's a very instructional video that describes the diverging diamond in general and some of its benefits and highlights some of the projects that already are in existence today throughout the United States, for which there's differing, conflicting information, but we know that there's at least 20 in operation today There's another several that are under consideration, planned, or in construction. If you look at one website, you'll see 46 of them are either planned or under construction or open to traffic across the United States. Others have reported upwards of 60 are either in design or under construction or open to traffic already.
Do we want to cut the lights maybe?
As traffic volumes grow and congestion worsens, motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists confront greater risks at intersections. We need balanced solutions that improve safety and keep people moving. At the Federal Highway Administration, our first priority is safety, and our mission is to improve mobility for all users of our nation's highways. In support of these goals, we've been evaluating innovative intersection designs for many years. Where they've been built, travelers save time, agencies save money, and communities benefit from safer facilities. One innovative intersection design, the Diverging Diamond Interchange, implements unimpeded left turns onto the highway by directing the traffic flow to cross over to the other side of the interchange and then cross back before leaving the interchange.
Alternative intersections are worth considering because they deliver more for less. They get more cars through the same spaces than a conventional intersection, and they deliver better safety than a conventional intersection.
At many intersections, the critical question is how to address left turns. How they are treated has an impact on the efficiency of the intersection and can reduce a crash type that tends to be quite severe. Missouri opened the first Diverging Diamond Interchange, DDI, in the United States in 2009. And several states have since adopted the DDI to ease traffic congestion at busy interchanges. At first glance, the DDI looks different than the traditional freeway interchange, with crossover locations at each end of the bridge. This may seem unusual, but these crossover points are actually the reason why the DDI functions so smoothly. They allow for better traffic flow and simpler left turns between the interchange and the freeway. Since driving the DDI is a little different than what most of us are used to, let's take a closer look at how a DDI works. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. 1. A DDI uses the same basic diamond interchange layout that is common in the United States. It consists of 2 entrance ramps and 2 exit ramps. 2. All of the right turns in a DDI look and work the same way as they would in a typical diamond interchange. Whether turning right from the crossroad to the entrance ramp or turning right from the exit ramp to the crossroad, drivers keep to the right side of the road or ramp. 3. The crossover intersections are what make DDIs different than typical diamonds. They are actually very intuitive. The crossovers are designed to gently transition or diverge traffic from the right side of the road to the left side of the road. Drivers going straight cross over a second time, back to the right side of the roadway. Drivers turning left from an exit ramp or to an entrance ramp are already on the left side of the road. They no longer cross paths with other traffic, a major safety advantage that results in more efficient operations. Guide signs and pavement markings are used throughout the interchange to direct drivers. It's that simple. The Diverging Diamond Interchange boasts a number of safety improvements. It cuts the number of potential vehicle conflict points in half.
Not only are you decreasing the number of conflict points overall, you're also decreasing the speed at which those conflicts happen. Most of the accidents that you can have, most of the conflicts that you can have now are sideswiped. And that can be mitigated for with proper signal design, with making sure that you have the right sight lines and things like that.
Good design principles, signage, and pavement markings make driving through a DDI simple and intuitive.
So no longer are you going through an open space like a diamond, where you can get hit to the right, the left, and the front. But every time you go through an opening in a DDI, you're only conflicting with one path at a time. And that makes a huge difference.
Although DDIs are usually deployed at locations with heavy traffic volumes, DDIs have proven to be beneficial to pedestrians and cyclists as well. Pedestrians can be accommodated either on the median in between the two crossovers or along the side of the road.
After a year that the first one was built, we hired a consultant to look at the performance and actually look through it, look at the crashes, compare those 5 years previous to when we opened it up. And we found that accidents were reduced by 53%.
A Missouri DOT survey showed that 87% of drivers feel safer in the new Springfield DDI compared to the previous Diamond interchange.
The commentary that I get when I interview people is, so how was it? And they say, what? I didn't even notice there was anything different.
Diverging Diamond interchanges can usually be built on the existing bridge deck when retrofitted. For new interchanges, fewer lanes are required, so there is less bridge structure and need for right-of-way. DDIs have been implemented in several states in a variety of roadway conditions. They can be built with the freeway over or under the crossroad, and at crossroads with as few as 2 lanes or as many as 10.
The intended use of the DDI is to accommodate those heavy left turns.
At the higher traffic volumes, the DDI has less delays, fewer stops, reduced stop times, and shorter queue lengths compared to the conventional Diamond interchanges. Delays were reduced by 15 to 60%, and throughput was increased by 10 to 30%. With its simple, unopposed left turns, efficient two-phase operation, narrower bridge structure width, lower costs, fewer conflict points, and dramatically increased throughput, the Diverging Diamond interchange is a welcome addition to the nation's roadways. The Federal Highway Administration encourages communities and agencies to consider the Diverging Diamond interchange to improve the efficiency and safety of existing interchanges, as well as an option for new interchanges. For more information about Diverging Diamond interchange and other innovative intersection designs, please visit safety.fhwa.dot.gov.
Thank you.
So there are a number of benefits as were presented to us during the procurement process by the Lane RDA team. With the improvements that I've already mentioned, with the spur ramp to the westbound Heathcote maneuver, the improved weaving conditions, there is also a reduced footprint overall. We've actually eliminated 2 total takes. With the previous design, we would have had to acquire 6 private properties. Now we only have to acquire 4, and those 4 are the same regardless of interchange concept, and it's because we're extending a limited access line northward to encompass the footprint of the interchange. So the properties that flank Route 15 on the north side of the interchange are still properties that we would have to take. But the footprint is substantially reduced from the original concept. It eliminates the 3rd level of the interchange, which we also found to be a visual obstruction. So it lowers it back down to the 2-level interchange configuration. It does provide opportunities still for landscaping and architectural treatments, which is going to be a requirement regardless. And we do believe that it operates equally as well as or better than in certain instances than the original concept with the flyover. The flyover really solved only one critical movement, but this particular configuration actually solves more of the critical movements than just the one. It has been tested and studied in terms of the morning and evening peak in the projected volumes all the way out to 2036, and we do have a couple of video clips that are not narrated, but they do show you a simulation of cars maneuvering through the interchange if you're interested in seeing either one of those. Let's show the AM peak first. So one of the biggest questions, or one of the most frequently asked questions that we've received is, how do we handle the heavy southbound to eastbound maneuver in the mornings? They will still have to go through one signalized intersection, but again, it's only a 2-phase signal. So upwards of 50% or more of the green time can be dedicated to the heavier maneuver in that morning rush. So they'll still come through the standard signalized intersection at Heathcote. They'll come to the very first crossover, potentially have to sit at a stop sign or stoplight rather for a few seconds. And then once permitted to go, they'll be able to make a free flow left turn onto the interstate through 2 lanes, not just a single one like the flyover interchange. So it actually doubles the capacity for that left turn maneuver once they get through that first crossover intersection. Now for the westbound off-ramp in the evenings, one of our heaviest movements there is the westbound off-ramp to the southbound Route 15. That we are showing as a triple left, and it too will be signal controlled, but it will work in conjunction with the 2-phase crossover intersection. So when the northbound traffic, which is now going to be on the left side of the roadway heading north, gets the green, then the triple left will also get the green, unimpeded, and they will not have to conflict with any other maneuvers, making that movement much safer, in that they won't have other traffic fighting for the same space as they're making that maneuver.
So the sync would only be for its limited area. It wouldn't be Heathcote synced or 55-15 synced?
Well, it will be
Anyway.
coordinated. The signal timings they're studying right now to see whether or not they can provide coordination between the adjacent signals as well.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be really useful.
Absolutely. So the idea, and we just had a meeting about this past week, the idea would be as soon as you get to that first crossover, if you're heading southbound on Route 15 and you get the green light for that first crossover, the idea would be to have you clear the queues and get all the way through the second crossover unimpeded.
Right.
The same is true for the westbound triple lefts onto Route 15, that they hope having to have a green phase for them, as well as also clear the second crossover to get back on southbound Route 15, so that it would have a chance to clear all the way through. So as soon as you start to go from either of those movements, the intention is to get them all the way through the DDI to the other side.
Right.
Now, whether they get stopped at 55, we're still working out the details and the timing and the sequence, given the close proximity of these other signalized intersections.
Okay. In this simulation, was that based on like a real traffic study that?
Yes.
I see you shaking your head.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me also explain, as part of this procurement process, because this is not the preferred alternative that had been studied and for which we had done our environmental document, we told these contractors that if they were to pursue an alternate configuration than what we had included in the RFP, that they would have to go back and prepare a supplement to the interchange modification report, which has to be approved by the Federal Highway Administration. They would have to do any additional public involvement necessary, for which a citizen information meeting is planned for the month of October of this year, to present all of the benefits, the same presentation basically we're giving today to you all, and that we've already provided to Supervisor Canlin and Delegate Marshall. We'll be making that same presentation to the citizens as well, and looking for any kind of feedback that they may have for us. So the supplemental IMR, any additional environmental studies that need to be done in support of this change will also be the responsibility of the design builder. So they have additional planning and preliminary engineering steps and processes that they must go through, but we've held for them the same contractual end date. So what this means is they'll be spending more time up front doing the design and approval processes, less time in construction, which we also see as a huge benefit to the travelers. They won't have their traffic flow impeded as much by construction, because this can be built in less time than the original concept.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions for?
Are you finished?
Oh, yeah.
I could go on all night. I'm trying to keep this confined, but by all means ask
My
questions.
concern has to do with the pedestrians.
Okay?
Could you address that? How do you guys
Absolutely.
see this issue to be is going to be addressed?
Okay, contractually we have required that the pedestrians be permitted to have, well, we were going to provide a facility for them all along the east side of Route 15 in concert with the long-range comprehensive plan that Prince William County has for this corridor. We have since been asked by Rick Canizales at Prince William County to consider shifting the shared use path onto the west side, because the crossings on the west side would be opposing much lower traffic volumes. So that it would be much safer for pedestrians to cross those ramps on the west side of the interchange than it would be on the east. What we're actually doing is crossing them over through the crossover intersections, the signalized intersections, into the median. So the location between the two crossover locations would be in the median. or on one side of one bridge, basically. There are two separate bridges to be constructed. The pedestrians would be on a facility adjacent or on one of those two bridges. So the crossovers, if you can zoom in.
That's the area of refuge.
So we'll walk you through with right. So at 55, we would have the signalized crossing over Route 15 to the west side, and then they would proceed along the west side of Route 15 up through the first crossover location.
And the pedestrian facility is the pink shade here in the exhibit.
So if you can see the little hand that's... So the first ramp they'll be crossing, actually, that the eastbound off-ramp to southbound Route 55 is going to be signal controlled also. So that would be a signalized crossing, the first one. The second one also through the crossover intersection, signalized control. So when the green is given to the southbound traffic, again, no other competing crossing maneuvers at that crossover location.
No right turn on reds, obviously.
No, there will be no turns permitted at that crossover location. Everybody has to go through. So there will be no other conflicts with the pedestrians either, and they'll have the same green time to cross as the traffic will at that location. They'll continue along in the median adjacent to the southbound lanes, to then where they cross the second crossover. Again, they will be able to get the same green time as the southbound maneuvers, unconflicted. There will be no other vehicles maneuvering through there at the same time except those that are going straight through. So the pedestrians will be walking parallel to the moving traffic, which we know through signalized control is the safest place for them to be. This would be, and then the westbound on-ramp is the only unsignalized crossing that they would have if indeed we move the shared use path to the west side. That is a much lower volume ramp than any of the others in this interchange. So we felt that this really does provide the safest path for pedestrians to take. Then once they get back up to Heathcote intersection, again, they'll have a signal control with a pedestrian push button and a phase for them to be able to cross back over to the east side of Route 15.
Will that be controlled as well with no right turn on red? Because a lot of the pedestrian crossings are the assumption that traffic's going to cross versus...
We can certainly consider that, although I guess by Virginia code, everyone's entitled to turn right on red, but you can at least sign it that no right turn on red when pedestrians are present, and that does help reduce those conflicts.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Chris?
Has any studies been done for overhead pedestrian crossings?
We have not engaged in any. We do know that they're certainly more costly to build, and they take up a substantial amount of right-of-way. Lane construction is in the midst of constructing another diverging diamond interchange at Valley View Boulevard and Interstate 581 in Roanoke, where I believe they are doing a separate pedestrian bridge structure. And Jan could really get into more details about that. It does take a substantial amount of real estate to be able to take them down on a separate path altogether, cross over the interstate, and have them come back up at grade. Or even to consider two pedestrian bridges, one at 55 and one at Heathcote. They can be very costly and very difficult to fit into existing right-of-way. So we might be looking at substantially more money to buy the real estate to be able to build pedestrian.
I think you guys will be saving money for the big flyover. So I just think it's worth looking into, because there is going to be an issue with the flow that you guys put together is really good, but it's gonna have hiccups when you have pedestrians pushing buttons. It's gonna stop the flow of traffic.
And those are some of the details we're definitely looking into, whether we have perpendicular crossings, what the timings of those intersections are going to be. We're still in a very conceptual design level phase right now, so we don't have all of the details worked out.
I knew we talked about, I guess, the bridge lighting, but is there any other plans for, like, just the whole intersection, the master lighting plan that would illuminate that whole area?
We don't have it other than between the crossover locations within the footprint of the interchange itself. Okay. We had done, I believe, an interchange lighting warrant analysis to see whether or not this interchange would warrant getting lighting all the way through, and it didn't meet the criteria.
Okay.
So it really doesn't support lighting all of the ramps. The other consideration is, of course, what portions you light. If the interstate itself was going to get lit all the way out to this interchange, it would push that that level of scoring on the warrant analysis up higher, in that you would then want the interchange lit as well. But the fact that we're not lighting the corridor doesn't help lend itself to then lighting the interchange.
Yeah, I guess my concern is just the pedestrian, but I guess that would be,
Well, because we're crossing this mess twice.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Now that they've changed it to the other side, you're crossing from the Walmart side over here, which we know that crossing already is a little precarious even now. So now you're forcing the whole thing, crossing over, down, and back into Haymarket again.
Right.
I mean, I understand the reasoning for it, but it's just a concern.
was it just the bridge lighting that was, do you remember? So it's just going to be on the bridge, that's it, nothing before, after, or?
Well, it will be lit from the crossover intersection to the crossover intersection.
Oh, okay.
I'd love to know how much it would cost to do the overhead bridge.
On
Just
either
to-
end of it, you mean?
Yeah, just on either end.
Just on either
A
end.
pedestrian bridge.
Just pedestrian bridge.
Can I add something
Sure.
to that? You mentioned the process, that is a factor. And by the way, I'm also with the preliminary engineering manager. The other factor is that, as Tina mentioned, you have to buy right of way, which affects businesses, which then you have to start looking at the impact on the businesses and how viable they are if you start taking it by the way. So that's also a consideration, not just the cost.
I think we're in a good state for that.
I did just want to mention too, as part of the traffic analysis and modeling that we're currently preparing and finalizing, it does include the evaluation of pedestrian movements throughout. So that
Yeah,
is accommodated with all the timings and analysis we're working on.
Yes, but with you putting in this new design, which by the way, it looks really good. With you putting in this new design, people are going to want to walk more.
Yeah.
So you're not taking that into consideration.
You have to, like,
I'm
double
going to
or
want to
triple
walk
your-
more to see this interchange.
Yeah.
Because this design, I don't know who came up with it, but this design is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm going to want to walk more on it. So just add 2 more people on that study.
Well, the fact that we have a high school,
Yeah.
that there's a lot of walking from that high school, that's, one of my concerns
This will-
coming down through that with
this will
all these
allow us-
kids. We have a high school and a middle
You
school.
talk about an anticipated growth, I could see that.
There's
double,
two
tripling,
challenges that I know of with developing pedestrian bridges. One is that you have to make them compliant for Americans with Disability Act. So you have to provide ramping at no more than 5%, and at every 200 feet you need to have a flat landing area. So you can make a ramp that zigzags back and forth until it gets up to the height that you need, and then you also need 23 feet of vertical clearance from the ground level up to the bottom chord of that bridge. So it's substantially higher even than a roadway bridge. A roadway bridge only requires 16 and a half feet of vertical clearance on an interstate and can be wavered down lower than that just to accommodate vehicles underneath. So it's kind of on par with like a railroad crossing, which I think has to have 23 feet of vertical clearance. So it's a much taller bridge than you can imagine a roadway bridge would be, and then you again have to tie them back down on the other side. So it's not, you can't even put like a spiral staircase, if you will, to help them get down on the other side. You can't assume everybody is able-bodied who's going to walk. The other thing is, and we found this in the I want to say it's Bailey's Crossroads area, but we put in a pedestrian bridge there, and still we found a lot of people want to cross at grade because it's the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line, and they don't want to go up and over and back down. So then we had to install several hundred linear feet of fencing that would prevent them from being able to cross.
Right.
And then you just dislocate them, and they'll move to another location and still cross at grade. So you're not guaranteed to get the users to use the facility, even if we invest in one. And that's a challenge.
I can see that point.
All right, yeah, I can too.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt first.
I mean, being a driver's ed instructor, this is an ingenious. Dallas has a lot of left hand where they cross over. I know in the Dallas Metroplex, this is an everyday occurrence for those people. It's very simple because you just basically stay in your lane and follow the arrows. My only thing is, I like where the pedestrians are protected. It's a lot safer than what we have now. I guess the only thing, would it be possible where, can you zoom in on the one place where you said they're not protected? I believe it's on the westbound ramp. Right there. Because everywhere else, they're walking parallel, which they'll never
Right.
cross traffic,
Right.
which I really like. But would it be possible at that one place just to put, since you're coming off a bridge, would it be possible to make like a walk bridge over top that on-ramp? Would there be room there where, because the only thing I can see is you get somebody coming around, they're building up speed, you get some 12-year-old on a bicycle, people aren't accustomed to entering an interstate looking for people, pedestrians crossing. I could see somebody getting whacked there. Whereas if you had just like a walk bridge over it, I mean, you have a lot of room to kind of get your grade and then come down the other side. Would that be a possibility just at that one intersection?
We could certainly look at it.
I mean, I wouldn't think that'd be that cost prohibitive. And again, I think everywhere else, as long as people pay attention, I think is very doable. It's just that one thing where people are looking to get on an interstate. I mean, without being redundant, I think that'd be a good thing.
With the original concept, we actually showed a box culvert underpass for pedestrians. As you may recall, on ramp C, and you don't have the configuration that showed the overlay of one versus yours. We had a box culvert shown in there. Okay. But the concern, again, that we had is that people aren't going to want to go into a tunnel even. You could light it, you could make sure it's plenty open enough, but there's a perception, anyway, that if you're going to be in a confined space, you're more subject to personal safety issues than if you just cross that grade. So we had originally considered that for this particular location. Again, because of the high speed, now people entering onto 66 eastbound, again, off-peak, because if you're in the morning, you know you're going to be going slow, but at any other time of the day, you're ramping up speed to get onto the interstate. So I agree with you, there's that concern. The reason now if you go back up to the unsignalized crossing, the reason they located it as north as they could along that ramp is to be in the sight line of motorists that would be potentially turning right onto Interstate 66 westbound. So there's other opportunities for mitigation also, even just having warning signs with flashing beacons, be aware of pedestrian crossings and that sort of thing. And then, of course, making sure that the pavement markings are clearly delineated.
I mean, for me and this whole design, just being a driver's ed teacher and high school teacher, that's the only part I don't like. I think everything else is ingenious. I can see it benefiting. Plus, we don't have some monstrosity aerial view where half the town sees this huge, like you're in a Springfield corridor. Plus, you don't have it icing over. It's all at grade. It's less of an eyesore. Just if you all could come up with some solution there. Because again, I'm not so sure lighting. I'm driving enough to know a lot of people don't necessarily pay attention getting on the interstate. So I'll shut up, but that's my only thing.
We can look into it. We'll look at options.
Well, one thing is that there will still be an icing condition above 66.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
understandable. Totally eliminate that issue, though.
Right. Well, in any overpass,
But with
an overpass.
With the modified diamond, with the flyover, there were 4 bridges. This only has 2. So icing is still a concern, but it's half the length of bridges.
Right, so it's more manageable.
It's more
It's a
manageable.
lot closer to
It lowers the maintenance cost also for the long range.
Right. The maintenance cost savings that may be used in the town of Haymarket for pedestrian crosswalks, perhaps. So I'm concerned about the islands of refuge.
Okay.
I understand you're walking pedestrians in the middle of traffic. I don't know how wide those islands are, and there is a phenomenon of discomfort when you're on the middle of traffic, when you're in a location, whether it be a railroad, whether it be a highway. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that. So to what extent have you considered that, and how wide is that area of refuge?
Do you have
the area between the 2 bridges?
The area between the traffic, where the pedestrians are walking. Right?
So on the one bridge, it's a 10-foot.
It's on the side.
It's on the side of the
It's on
bridge.
the north side.
It's along the northbound side of 60. So what it will be is a 17.5-foot wide raised curb section of which 10 feet is technically designated as a shared use path, so that there's a defined separation between the edge of travelway to the start of that shared use path at a minimum of 8 feet.
No barrier or anything?
No barriers planned.
There is a barrier between the...
Oh, I'm sorry, there is a barrier.
I don't have this that I can...
There will be barrier separation on that bridge. So there'll be a vertical barrier that separates pedestrians from the motorists.
So that's that section.
So besides the curb,
I'm sorry, forget the curb.
forget
On
the
the
curb.
other two bridges, I have two projects in my head. The I-66 widening, where we're replacing Old Carolina and Jefferson Street Bridge over 66, and Cat Harp, and both of those are just going to be on raised curbs. Those are 17.5 feet wide. With the barrier separation, it doesn't have to be as wide, but you do have that physical barrier to separate the traveling public, motorists, from pedestrians and bicyclists, and still accommodate the 10-foot width plus a clear zone from it. So I believe it's
Right,
probably
we've
still
got 14 feet between the barrier and then the outside barrier.
So you give a 2-foot shy line on either side. So the shared use path is technically designated still as 10 feet within the 14 provided.
I've talked to my friends at DHB and HNTV, and they've convinced me this is a really good design, and it works very well. I am concerned, though, about the numbers and levels of service compared to what the original alternative was.
Okay.
And I haven't had a chance to really look at this, so if there's a way you could get that information explained,
Okay.
it would be helpful.
All right, let me explain what I can. I'll let Mark also chime in. We can't study a diverging diamond using traditional software analyses packages that we have. So like highway capacity software would give you a direct output of level of service, A, B, C, D, or F. E or F. It's not what it grades in school. A through F. So what we have to look at is other measures of effectiveness. And the Lane RDA team did a VISM model, which is a simulation model. Those were the cars that you could see moving. And it then reports back to us certain measures of effectiveness. So it will give us seconds of delay. It will give us average queue lengths. It will give us the maximum queue lengths, which are usually those same indicators that will then define what a level of service is. What we found is that each heavy maneuver or approach is comparable with the original concept, the modified diamond with the flyover, to the DDI. They're comparable. There were improvements in some of the heavier, more critical movements. And what you may see is in that some of those lesser volumed maneuvers, a slight increase in delay. But that's a slight increase in delay for a fewer number of vehicles and an improvement, or at least no worse than, for the heavier movements. And so that's what those comparative tables, I believe I sent them to Holly and made them available to you. So if you can look just even at the color coding of those two tables, one is one was the preferred alternative before, the existing or the modified diamond with a flyover, and the other is the diverging diamond. And even if you just look at the colors that are shown in those charts, there are the same number of yellows and one orange, I believe, but there's actually an improvement from one yellow to a green, which means it's made an improvement in that heavy maneuver. You can also look at the second or the fourth to last column, and that has the seconds of delay. And you can see those side by side, that those are comparable. So in definition of level of service, a level of service A, for instance, would have up to, if I remember correctly, like 13 seconds of delay. So you have a range of numbers that defines a good level of service. B likewise might go from, say, 13 up to 20. I forget my traffic engineering days. I used to do that sort of stuff every day for work. But again, there's a range of acceptable seconds of delay per vehicle to define each level of service. And so even where you see a nominal increase in seconds of delay per vehicle, it's still within an acceptable range of what we would define as levels of service. So we did find that though there may be increases in delay in some particular maneuvers, there's more improvement in those that were fixed with the diverging diamond.
And the peak period, what was the time period used for the peak? The peak hour, I guess, is what you did the analysis on?
Yes, we did an AM peak and a PM peak. I'm not sure exactly what that window was. We used obviously the same as the original IMR prepared by PDOT and their consultant. We can get you that information.
Yeah, that'd be great. So now, I'm sorry.
I just want to explain what y'all are looking at real quick.
was a little concerned about that, the dominant move, I guess, that southbound,
Southbound to eastbound.
concerned about the queuing north on 15 and, thinking that the flyover would solve
So
that.
let me talk a little bit about that, because that is an interesting condition. With the flyover, everybody who was destined for eastbound 66 would have to stack in the rightmost lane southbound on 15. So the queues we found would have been substantial from Heathcote back up 15 as they're stacking in wait to get onto the flyover. With the diverging diamond interchange, they can now spread across all 3 lanes heading southbound, and then only have to move over 1 lane to be in the left 2 lanes to now get onto the free flow movement to get onto eastbound 66. So that actually lessens the queues for those that are destined for eastbound 66. It's a great improvement for the diverging diamond.
So did you say 2 lanes to join onto 66?
Yes. There are 2 lanes that will be on that ramp for that particular southbound to eastbound maneuver. And they'll be joined by a 3rd lane from the northbound to eastbound maneuver. And those 3 will then merge together into 2 and then again down to 1 as it reaches the interstate. So we've accommodated for the appropriate merging conditions on that ramp as well.
When you did your traffic analysis, did you do perturbed scenarios? And when you did those, did you compare the original alternative versus the diverging diamond?
I'm sorry, the
perturbed scenario, where you have a real disruption in the traffic flow for whatever reason.
No. We simply just study the worst hour in the morning and the worst hour in the evening. Another consideration, which I keep trying to promote as hopefully the next high priority project, as soon as we get a grade separation at the railroad, those 17 rail trains that come through on a daily basis that right now impede all flow because all traffic comes to a complete stop. Once we can get a grade separation there, all of this will have already solved a lot of the problems. That will solve the rest of the problems, I believe. That is still a consideration, but at the Route 55 and 15 intersection, there has been recent signal improvements that now at least allow for the dual left turn onto Washington Street when there is the preemption call for the trains. So when the railroad crossings come, at least one maneuver can still go. In our conversation last week, we're looking at now maybe some other controllers that permit a revised program, if you will, to maybe address also the east and west maneuver, so that Route 55 through movements can still potentially go, as well as the southbound left turn onto Washington Street. So we're looking at opportunities to improve those operations, even in the perturbed condition of when there will be a train crossing.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
I guess the only question I have is a question that came up at the last meeting, is what happens during a power outage?
Yeah, that's right.
Because under a normal situation, people sort of know what to do because everything's straight. And but with all these diverging diamonds now, with a power outage, there just seems to be mass confusion. Is there any thoughts on that?
In other words, do they do any kind of UPS backup to the controllers, or at least give you a flashing red or something?
Each of the signals will come with a battery backup that'll take over in the event of a power outage.
And that'll last for half an hour, hour? Or?
No, much longer than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So full operation will continue, not just a blinking red light or yellow light?
They'll most likely go to red during a power outage.
So a flashing red then?
Yes.
Which then obviously the police have to be part.
Flashing red, flashing yellow on the Virginia is the same difference.
Yeah, but my concern is with the diverging diamond, people are going to have potentially more confusion on what to do and when to go and that sort of stuff, as opposed to a regular interchange.
It's a very valid question. I honestly haven't considered it.
Yeah, actually, again, with the movements being simpler, even during that flashing condition, you won't have those left turns that are trying to judge when they can get across traffic. If everyone follows the signage or marking that'll be in place, and if they've driven and become accustomed to the interchange, it'll be natural for them to simply go straight through the interchange, which will guide them through, and they won't have those left turn vehicles trying to get across in front of them.
So if we had to plan for an an officer for every light, how many officers would we need to make that?
Two, it looks like.
Just
You
two.
gotta run back and forth.
Okay. All right.
If I can ask a follow-up
Sure.
question. I know this is an engineering question, probably not prepared to answer, but today's technology with the LED signals, I wouldn't think the power draw would be any more to run the light on a conventional cycle as opposed to flash.
Yeah, sure.
So, why couldn't it be, this continuous operation would be a normal cycle?
I would love to take this question back to our traffic operations experts. I'm certainly not one of them, but we have a whole staff of experts of traffic operations and signal controllers. We'll certainly ask them that question, if indeed we can keep it in full operation even during a power outage.
Right. Okay.
It's a very good
I mean,
question.
granted, there's a limit to whatever the batteries are going to hold.
Right, I think it's 4 hours.
course,
I may be wrong, but
We're relying on Dominion Power with all these power lines. Give us continuous power.
there you go. Are you going on a
They're going to alleviate the problem.
I think buried lines always help you with fewer outages. I know that's true in my house.
Joe?
Yeah, so just to follow up though on the outreach, I read that you were going to do extensive outreach to communicate and educate the public and what have you, and that's a wonderful thing. And for the folks that use it regularly, no problem. So my other concern in looking at this is 15 is a pretty busy road. It's used as a through road from Pennsylvania, Maryland, Southern Virginia. So we're going to have a lot of folks that are not very familiar with this. So aside from, the signage and the flared road approaches and the curvature, is there anything else you're doing to help with that situation? Or are we finding any other problems elsewhere? When you look at the safety data,
Right.
is it folks that use it regularly, or is it folks that are new to it? Any idea?
There is another video that we do have, which was from Utah DOT, that talks about the intuitive nature of driving through a DDI. Because once you're in, the two most confusing locations are the crossover locations. But the way that they are angled on its approach and the way that the design is of those crossover locations, it really just guides you straight through. There's really no opportunity to make a wrong turn at a DDI. I don't know if you want to pull up that video. I don't think it's quite as long as the FHWA one. But there's also videos, and you can go onto YouTube. I'm going to encourage all of you. You can go onto YouTube and search for diverging diving interchange. There's a lot of really great resources out there, including personal driving experience of a man driving his vehicle, videotaping while he's driving, maneuvering through, and discussing, what is his experience. This is new to him. He's driving through there the first time. He's trying to figure out, what he's been told about it. Does it really add up the way that...
There's also one that's a pedestrian walking through.
Yes,
on YouTube.
that gives
That's
diverging
not
environments
necessarily
a very bad name.
positive to it, but it does give you at least a vision of walking
Yes, of
through
walking through it. And I will...
The commentary was not positive, but
It was not, and unfortunately the design fell a little short of providing pedestrian passage. There was no shared use path. He was walking in a ditch where there was no shared use path, and he thought, well, this is just not family friendly. So I have seen those too, but you have to kind of take that into context with the shared use path that we're providing, the actual dedicated space for the pedestrians, the crossovers, push buttons, all of those things, and then the safe refuge areas, those islands where they'll have plenty of space to stand and wait for the next signal.
For a new driver, this is going to be a lot less confusing than a roundabout.
Yes, I would think so.
A
Yes.
roundabout on Route 15, to take a new driver through a roundabout where you got traffic coming from every direction with no signal, very little signage, this would be extremely simple. Because once you cross over,
And Lane Construction, by the way, was the one who built the 3 interchanges at Gilbert's Corner and the other 2 adjacent ones. So we have the same contractor on board
well,
who
that's
was
not that's
confronted
just
with the same
reality.
challenges of educating the
That's
public.
just reality. I mean, I'm looking at this from somebody who's never driven before. Somebody who has had 20 hours of driving is not going to have a problem navigating that because just the way the lanes are pointing. They don't care which side they're on as long as their lane's going this direction. So I would certainly think an experienced driver knows how to stay in a lane.
There is also a link, if you look, I believe, if you just search on the internet for Diverging Diamond Interchange, there is also a news report that down in, I think it was 29 NBC News, but down in the Zion Crossroads area, and they interviewed drivers on the very day that it was open to traffic. If you see that report, and I wish they would do a follow-on another couple of weeks later, it was the very day that it was opened, even before permanent pavement markings were in place, before the final signage was in place. And there were many people who were very confused on that very first day. There were still drums and cones set up. It still looked like a construction site, and now all of a sudden we're asking people to cross over into what feels like oncoming traffic, when in fact there was no oncoming traffic. In those cases, and in that particular DDI, they were able to retrofit the existing bridges. In this particular case, we're replacing both of those existing bridges with brand new bridges, and they're going to be physically separated also. So that helps with those crossover alignments to really guide you into a path where you can't think, I need to turn left or right yet. I just need to go straight through. And then with the permanent pavement markings of the straight arrows and the overhead signage, it's going to even further help direct you straight to where you need to go. And then you're going to have exit signs to the left or right that will help you also. But it's very intuitive. If you want to go left, you stay to the left. If you want to go right, you stay to the right.
Okay. We have a couple questions here. Martin?
Thank you. Is there any difference in the way that this configuration works with regard to snow removal? Does that work just the normal?
It works the same way.
Okay.
It was just a quick one. I noticed that there was something in there that said you have accounted for future traffic. So how much more traffic did you account for? Like doubled or just, 20% more?
If I remember correctly, the background traffic growth is anticipated to grow at about 3% per year between now and the year 2036.
Okay.
I think at a 2% growth rate in 20 years, that is equivalent to double because it compounds every year.
Right.
So it would, assuming about double the traffic, yes.
So, okay. And it's configured to handle all of that.
Sounds like at least through our lifetimes, maybe.
It'd be nice not to see any construction there.
I just want to go back to the comment that Chief made and the Vice Mayor made with, in case of outages. It seemed as if with a design like this that's a few years ahead of our time. It seemed like having those lights remaining out or flashing red or flashing amber, it seemed a bit primitive. I think it would be useful for VDOT to do the research to see if we can have that problem eliminated. Who knows, we may be setting a precedence in our country. But for Northern Virginia and for this region having a design like that, I think it's worth looking into to get backup lights.
Absolutely.
Any other questions on this side?
No.
Yes.
Sure. First of all I think as soon as Councilman Moore said that, is like, all right, everybody races over for the patent.
Who said it? I did.
Just one real quick thing. One of the things that comes to us as from a town's perspective, and this is probably a little bit beyond design, but as we talk about pedestrian safety and everything, I know this has been a long-standing project we've been working on and everything, but if you go to the intersection of 15 and 55, there's one thing that we probably should give strong consideration to. Even though you have the pedestrian signals, pedestrians are going to be crossing about, almost six lanes with the median of traffic. And the signal timing right now, Joe, is not that. It's 25 seconds. The question I would say is, like, as you're wrapping up design, is there any way to nose out the median just a little bit, maybe provide some kind of refuge for some other safety groups?
Are you talking
An emergency.
You have some kind of refuge in between it, because it is a long span to get across there.
It's a red strip.
Well, the refuge would be, it's not a grass refuge, it'd be a curved refuge. Because in other words, you'd still be on a grade.
The trouble that we have at this particular intersection is the number of dual left turning maneuvers permitted. And in order to accommodate the design vehicle, which is a WB62, it's a rather large truck, but in order to accommodate one at this location, they are investigating whether or not to permit, for instance, a lead and lag green time so that, let's say, all westbound gets to go first, including its left turn, while the eastbound approach stops and waits. And and then the through movements of both go, and then the lag time for the left turning then from the eastbound direction. So that's one opportunity that may allow for some minor modifications to this particular intersection configuration. But as it stands now with the dual lefts from northbound and southbound, as well as the dual lefts from the eastbound direction, the intersection has to grow in space to accommodate dual turning vehicles at the same time. So we have, what we use is auto turn templates, where you actually define what your design vehicle is, and it will create an envelope of the path that that vehicle takes, including any overhang of a large truck. So it'll show you the wheel path as well as what the vehicle actually takes up in space. And so in order to accommodate that, they've had to widen out this intersection and also pull the median noses back a little bit in order to allow those maneuvers to happen safely. They are fine-tuning the design, and that's something we can look into to see whether or not we can bring the median closer and provide that refuge in the middle. But I dare say we're going to be challenged in doing so and still accommodate the traffic.
That's the intersection I worry about the most. It's hard now.
Yeah.
Of course, Joe. Please.
Every time you ask a question, I have so on 55 to the east. Now, those are islands there as well? Those are
The
medians?
purple
Yeah, the purple.
is a raised median on 55. And then there's the channelizing islands, which are both in green and pink. So those are raised islands, and where you're going to have the refuge for pedestrians.
Okay, and the design is to have pedestrian crosswalks there as well?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, all right, that's great.
So in future growth of, say, the southwest, there's no pedestrian anticipated? I mean, I realize that land is nothing going on now.
It's
but
not that it can't be put in. It
Right.
could be accommodated through a future
Right.
design modification fairly simply.
Right, okay.
I go back to my original point. I think with the money that VDOT is saving, we should look at that overhead pedestrian crossing.
I'm going to look to Claudia to that answer, because working as a preliminary engineering manager, one of her things is to help identify priorities for the localities and try to identify funding sources for them. But oftentimes when we show a savings on our projects, that money that had been saved has been taken to accommodate another project. So
Well,
I
if
don't
that's
know
the
what
case, we're
funding-
going to demand for the flyover.
I don't know where we are on funding is really what I'm saying. Certainly we can look into it. I don't want to promise spending another couple $1 million and then all the right of way and the timeline that it would take to get us there. It would certainly impact our completion date, and we do want to get this interchange constructed and open to traffic because there is a huge demand. We do know that this is a cut-through area while the Linton Hall Road interchange is under construction.
Right.
We do hope that when that is open to traffic, that will also help siphon off some of this cut-through traffic so that triple lefts may not be needed. Maybe a dual left would be sufficient. We'll still build 3, but so we know that this has been a project in coming for quite a long time, and there's interest in seeing this interchange reconfigured and getting it open to traffic. So we don't want to delay the project.
But is it something that VDOT could look into?
We can look into
look at the properties that they may need to purchase and to see how long and how much it would cost. I think that would be
Yeah, we
just
could do
giving
that.
us the information would be good.
Well, putting aside the number of movements on the east side, for the pedestrians, have you even designed that out, rough preliminary, just to see what that would look like?
What, a pedestrian facility on the east side?
Yeah.
Yes, that was part of the original concept that was proposed to us by... Well, originally, yes, but even with the DDI, originally they were going to cross at grade, eliminating that box culvert.
So it would essentially mirror what you see here.
Right.
It would go along the east side, cross ramp C, and this is where we had concern about the high volume.
That's a vision
Right.
ramp.
And that is unsignalized.
Yeah.
Then we would come across the signalized intersection and still cross this bridge identical to what we have shown right now.
On the other side.
Then instead of coming across to the west side, we would come back across these ramps on the east side.
And 2 out of the 3 of those crossings at this particular location are signalized, but the free flow right turn from westbound 66 to northbound 15 is unsignalized.
Right.
And also, even though it's coming to a smaller facility where you're slowing, you're still not stopping necessarily for pedestrians. And so the same driver awareness of, oh my goodness, I'm coming up to an intersection, I better be careful of pedestrians. Same thing
It's much
applies.
better in this layout.
It is.
Okay.
We think so too. We think so too. And I think I don't know, did you provide the comparative tables that have the volumes of those ramps?
I
So in my responses to some of the questions that we saw, I did put together a comparative table. The left side is what would happen if you put the shared use path on the east side, so you can see the heavy volumes that are, I'm sorry, the west side is on the left, the right side is the crossings if it was all to the east. And so you can just see the volumes that are projected in 2036 for those ramp crossings. So if you add them all up vertically, you'll see how many potential conflicts there would be for pedestrians crossing on the east side, or the west side of the interchange as opposed to the east side.
Okay. All right, great. All right, any other questions, Brian? Dorothy? Questions from the council? Any closing remarks? Okay. All right, thank you very
for
much.
having us.
And we do have, we've got flash drives with these exhibits and also the video we showed you, and then also some other videos that we can leave behind.
Yeah, maybe we'll leave
What's your next step in the process?
Citizen information meeting in October. The designer is following through on some of the comments that we've provided on this very conceptual layout. They are also simultaneously preparing the supplement to the interchange modification report for review by the NOVA District, our central office, and then the Federal Highway Administration. So that approval will hopefully coincide with some of the design approval activities, environmental studies, and the like. So by the end of this year, we hope to get full approval to move forward with this project, and we hope to get under construction by spring of next year.
Okay. All right.
And who on your team that I can speak with after this meeting concerning power lines running along 66? That was a
Any
secret.
one of them in the front row here.
Yeah? Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Well, great. Thank you very much.
Thank
We're
you.
going to go ahead and take another recess for a
Well done.
few minutes. Thank you for your time.
Oh, I was going to start on this side. I didn't want to wait until the day before something.
About 7:35, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Let's see, to save some of the time, we'll see if there's any specific questions or issues that we have about the agenda. As we go through here. Yes, sir.
May I ask, so that we can let Holly go, I wish I could let Jenny go, but she's got her quarter with me. What I was going to say is, could we just, if anyone has any questions for Holly real quick, I know Councilman Aiken had mentioned one issue, and other than that, we just have a general question about the agenda coming up. So.
Okay.
But if we could just let her go, and then I'll let you ask for other questions.
Great.
I do have one question. I went over and talked to Dottie today, and just kind of followed up on her trash thing. We've been out of town, and thanks to Councilman Joe here, she was very complimentary and moved her trash. Very appreciative. But she did bring up one thing, that the entrance to her driveway is extremely steep, and her daughter's vehicle drug, she showed me the mark, and looking at it, I mean, it is extremely steep. What can we do to mitigate, to help her out?
We have been looking at that. It is too steep according to the design, and the way to fix that is going to have to be to lower the sidewalk and grade up some into her driveway. That is the only way to fix that. And it is, we had it surveyed to verify it is too steep. I have a feeling that when we relayed the sidewalk a couple years ago, I can't guarantee, I can't tell you exactly why it happened. I know at one point in time it was designed so that it would seamlessly tie in. I don't want to put the blame on anyone. I have a feeling that throughout time, as the sidewalk was picked up and laid back down, that somehow or another it got a little goofy, so it's too steep.
How many inches are we talking about?
I just got the spot shots today. There was a rough and dirty calculation on the grade, and everybody agreed, yeah, it's too steep. I just got the spot shots today, so I don't have that number.
Okay.
But we have been looking at it, and I met with our inspectors and the Finley foreman out in the field, and that's the only way to fix it, is you take it from the street side and you have to lower it and then go back up into the driveway. So that will require some additional coordination with Ms. Leonard. So we're working on it.
Okay, so when I go back to her, because I told her I would ask the question. We're proposing taking more of her property and pushing the whole sidewalk back?
No.
It's just a chrome, cut in the chrome.
What we would do is, basically, this is the edge of pavement. If this is her entrance, if it's steep, we'll have to lower it like this.
Does that mean you have to cut the apron too?
The apron's going to have to be torn out. The brick sidewalk will have to be torn out. And part of her asphalt and her roundabout, that's going to have, because if we lower it here, we can't just leave a big jump. You have to grade it back up.
But we're not moving the sidewalk.
No, the sidewalk, it's going to stay in the same place horizontally,
Okay.
just lower.
All right, and then the last question, totally unrelated. A lady named Crystal, my neighborhood, was curious, when is FiOS going to be available to the home? I told her I would ask.
That is not my...
Yes. They're not accept for FiOS to come. They would need to have to sign a franchise agreement with the town, and so essentially they have told us all the way higher up that they are not in the time where they're signing any new franchise agreements. So we're kind of like stuck. It's FiOS, and I think our bigger concern is why are you advertising it this way that you're here when we
continue to ask them every time they.
So I did ask them, what would it take to get a franchise agreement with you? They definitely told us no. So
why is that? I mean,
I can't remember everything off the top of my head with the email, but I can forward.
I was going to say the background Steve could bring up.
I never did know the whole story on the background.
I spoke with the vice president of FiOS Verizon about 6 months ago on this issue because I kept harassing the guys at the events here that sell FiOS.
Yeah.
Granted, FiOS is in Green Hill Crossing on the Gainesville side, so it's close. It's just not in town limits. He was apologetic, but he said that they have finished signing new agreements, that they're putting all their money into expanding their current footprint, that when they start signing new agreements and sometime in the future, then it's back on the table. But right now they have a policy that they signed a bunch of new agreements years ago, and then they ran out of money for new agreements, and now they're just marketing what they have.
And why were we never part of that to begin with?
Well, you can take that back in 2008 when I was on council, and Jennifer, please correct me if I say anything incorrect, but during in 2008, they did come, they presented it. There was an agreement that was presented to the council, and basically the council at the time was the majority, or actually one person's very vocal thing that in picking the agreement, there were certain things that they considered were the state minimum that they should be offering the town, and there was concern that the restoration of coming through town and restoring things back was such an issue that we basically
told them to go away.
We told them to go away, and because of that, that relationship there, then when we wanted to come back, they basically didn't have any kind of conversation. We couldn't bring them back to the table after just publicly telling them that we're concerned. Yep.
It's not it at all. Alexandria is having the same issue. They cannot enter into agreement.
They can't bring up to the. But the reason why we didn't get in the first place was because.
But actually, it was really the town attorney had a very difficult time working with Verizon, and that was the power force behind it was the town attorney.
All right.
Couldn't move forward. Now, keep in mind, you have FiOS. You can get FiOS internet all day long in your home. You just can't get TV.
Okay.
No, I asked them that. They said no.
We have residents in town that actually have it in town, believe it or not.
That's interesting, because I did ask that specific question. Well, the infrastructure is on 55. It's not necessarily down in the
it's not an Haymarket station.
developments.
Right. They haven't brought the infrastructure down there.
No, they never put it
On Gainesville side, but not on Haymarket side.
Gainesville side.
Not on the Haymarket side.
Not internet.
No. They made marks on the streets that they were going to put it in, and they
Never did.
stopped.
Yep.
Yes,
Somebody figured out, wait a minute. But I would love to talk to somebody about getting internet only. I would be happy to do that.
Okay.
Yes, Matt.
To bring popcorn next time.
Long and short of it, no new agreements. Okay, I'll go back. She won't be happy, but I fulfill it. But I guess my biggest thing is she's not the only one. She's had people. She's kind of the spokesman who sought me out. Was there any way we could get a blurb up on the website about Fios update, even though necessarily there's no update, and just say, because that would reach out to the community. The more we could put like a hot topic or however you want to determine it, you know, however, you know what I'm saying, just to make them aware when they go to the website.
We'll put an announcement on there.
Okay, I think that'd be
Jennifer, we had something on there already.
Well, we have. We've reached out to the people who are their franchise agreements. Basically, not to make light, I jokingly told Jen she set me up to get rejected. So, but I needed to send. I needed to send out the email.
A new rejection.
Yeah. So
we have a new
But I don't know
attorney,
that
a new counsel.
I think the townspeople are under the misconception, though, that it's like Haymarket not allowing Fios to come in, or that we don't have a good relationship with them.
Well, in the beginning, that's exactly true.
Right. So,
So
but
it was only because of the council not allowing and signing the agreement that they presented to us.
Right.
We wanted different terms. We wanted what we thought was the correct, at least was a state minimum. The biggest concern was the disruption and the repair that we basically discouraged them, and
So 6 years ago, we blew it.
we blew it.
right. But now I think people need to know that it's because of the whole. Nobody can.
it's not for the lack of trying.
Right.
Right.
And now it's
Right.
the different situation of.
So I mean, because I'm still hearing that part of it. I hadn't heard that part of it.
But if we put it on the web and people are that upset about it, they
It's
know
a
how
hot
to
topic.
dial Verizon and
It's a
maybe
hot
start
topic.
putting pressure where it's not just the town. Now it's people paying bills. So anyway, thank you.
Any other question for Holly?
Well,
Sure.
the Verizon issue, what makes it even more confusing is that last year, I believe, they were doing the line, the striping, the painting, and everybody in my neighborhood was like, wow, we're going to have a little competition. So, what was the
That was a disconnect. It was a disconnect, I think, when we there was somebody, one of the council members checked in and said, "Why is this happening?" Then everything stopped. I'm not sure Jim might have, but yeah, it was a mistake on their part to include that.
But how do we correct that though? The past council made a mistake.
Well, I wouldn't call it a mistake. It was just, they made a
No,
decision.
They come once they started agreeing to do franchise agreements
We
again.
worked diligently on a franchise agreement that was not agreeable to the town, and at that time, it was that council. But it was not acceptable, the terms that were being placed on the residents.
Yeah, a small town doesn't get as good a terms as a big county.
Well, it's my understanding at the time, it wasn't even as equal a level as, they had just signed the Percival agreement, and
Correct.
it was subpart of the Percival agreement. They felt like they were getting walked on, and they stood their ground. So please understand that the council acted in the best interest of the town at that time.
Yep.
With the information.
And I'm okay with that.
So
I
not
just
that they made a mistake.
I just think that the people out there, the residents, the people that you're talking to, they think that the council, screwed the town over. And,
That's what Verizon told me.
right. And so
So
I just think we need to clarify
I think in addition to what Matt is suggesting, I'm sure Brian, with a man of words, he's going to be able to word it in such a way. Is this being recorded?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's going to be able to word it in such a way where the council back in 2006, their decision was the right decision for the town. So please include that in whatever publication we give to the public, and then tell them that, hey, since then, we have approached them and asked them.
And we have a form email that
We have a chain of emails.
a chain of emails that said,
There's a
and
hot
they
topic.
sent what they sent back last time. I don't think that would be any issue. I think you can put that up.
I published all the time.
Please do.
I'm saying we'll put up. We'll give a brief background. I'll probably bullet it
I'll show you the
out.
city of Alexandria. It's very, very tasteful.
And I think just tag teaming on that, I think we need to use the website. Didn't I say that the last meeting? We need to use the website more in dealing with these sensitive issues to inform our people, because they're walking away with ideas that they're getting from Verizon. Yeah, they're walking away with these things. Let us feed them with the proper information, and then it's going to be easier for us. We're going to be able to say, hey, have you gone to the webpage?
Yep.
You know?
That's there's a wealth of information on your website currently. Not necessarily by FiOS right now, but that's not something that takes us a long time to put together and put it up. The issue is more of getting people to go there. And,
True.
And in the day and age we live and work in now, even websites are so much more static now.
Well, if I had FiOS, I might be able to get to them.
Well, that's
listen, that is true. However, there has never been, for the past 2 months since I've been here, an issue that has been raised from the podium where we've directed people to the website. The answer was never there. The website is good, it has all the answers, but we've never directed someone to the website to answer a question that they've given to us. So yes, that part is true, but all of these different issues that we're getting from the citizens, the answer is not there, and that's where I think we can do a better job. And the thing is that you guys are phenomenal in getting the information together and putting it out there. So
Well, let me piggyback on that, because I agree with you.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we really have to look at it comprehensively, how we do the outreach, because it's not just the website. There has to be other vehicles, other modes of getting that information out. And that's why we need to really look at a comprehensive outreach plan. Not complicated, but enough to make sure you get the best exposure and saturation for the community.
Well, that goes back to this, quarterly walkthroughs our neighborhoods. Maybe having a pre-printed up sheet with the hot topics or whatever we would come up with, where we have them printed up and we just walk, and then once someone's not home, we stick it on their door so at least they knew somebody came by. We have the website, we have the walk-arounds, it'd be very easy. It's a speaking bullet point topic. So
Okay, what we're going to do is go back to Holly. If there are any further questions for Holly, that's okay. For
I
Holly.
need to follow
Yep.
up one thing real quick with Councilman Cottle. When you talk to Ms. Leonard, please tell her that it's not that it's just the work is not going to be done. The VDOT inspectors will coordinate with her ahead of time.
So the VDOT's going to come.
Yes, before we go and start ripping stuff up on her and ripping up part of her driveway, we're gonna make sure that she is talked to. In other words, explained and hear her concerns and let her know what's going to happen based off of her request. I don't want her thinking that it's just going to happen with no one talking with her.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to make that.
I appreciate that. Thanks for
No other questions for Holly?
Just one quick question. Relative to the Eat Our Dust or whatever.
Pardon our dust.
Pardon our dust. That's a shirt that the kids used to have. So the Old Carolina Bridge starts on the 22nd, right?
Yes.
All right. Is Cat Harpin, is Cat Harpin going to be done towards the end of that concurrently?
It's going to be done at the same time, but they're building the Cat Harpin Bridge adjacent to the existing bridge.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm talking about
Closures?
Old Carolina, right? They're going to be working on that, and I'm sure they could probably do some work ahead of time on Cat Harpin because they're not going to take it out, right?
No, they're not. That's what they say. They're going to be working on them both at the same time.
That's
Okay. All right.
And before I go, one of my things is after hearing the VDOT presentation, does the council want the agenda items where from last month offering support of the diverging diamond or switching the shared use back to the west side back on the agenda, or would you still want to hold off till a future date before putting that back on the agenda?
I would like to see some reaction from the public. I think they have to do a public meeting in October. They said.
Yeah.
I mean, do we gain any benefit by doing something next month anyway?
I just wanted to know that it was
Too much now.
September, October, so
Because we couldn't do it until November meeting if we're waiting for the October presentation for the public. Is that too late to wait till November?
I know they're anxious to get it sooner rather than later, but at the same time, I want you guys to feel comfortable doing it when you feel like it's appropriate to do it. So I don't want to try and rush you if you don't want to be rushed.
I am comfortable with it. I don't know, I can't speak for everyone else, but I am comfortable with the current configuration.
I would like to hear from the public. I'd like to hear a little bit more about what people think before we do something.
Get public on that. Any thoughts?
I mean, I like the design, but I think the more we can get the homeowners, as long as it's done in a good amount of time, it just doesn't get drug on and on and on.
I'm comfortable with the way it is now, except for this intersection up here, 1555. So,
And Chris, I think you might have been there
sponsor that. We're waiting for the public input. We kind of waited.
Was it BDOT or Dominion?
BDOT, wrong.
BDOT.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
I think it was Dominion that I waited on.
Okay. All right.
But, I mean, I'm comfortable with it as it is. I think it's important to get the feedback. I just don't want to be the group that holds up.
Well, I think the concern is putting it on the agenda to
Well,
further
and that was
discussion.
my question, too.
So maybe October meeting, how about
Yeah.
that?
I think
Is that
that
a
would be-
compromise?
I don't think it's a compromise because we still won't have
We won't.
If we reach out to our
But
public.
you all,
Why?
it would give you all the month of September to hear any other additional concerns or anything to that effect.
Yeah,
Internally
exactly.
and everything.
Bingo,
Just
yeah.
because all you're basically saying is you're saying you can live with the concept as it was presented in you live with the shared use path going on the western side of the night. Correct?
But we could actually put it maybe on October's and then continue it on November's.
Yeah. If you think there's a reason to move it.
Right.
The other thing is they gave us on our website right now, we have links that show the diverging diamond and I believe the comparison with the flyover. There was 2 separate graphics, and they gave me the information so we can do that same video that you guys saw along with the simulation. So we'll work on getting that up on our website as well. So I don't have a good answer. And by the way, it's 2 separate issues. That support of the diverging diamond and support of switching the shared use path are separate items.
Okay.
So I kind of hear mixed feelings. Do you guys want it on this? You want it on the October agenda with the ability to postpone it, a motion of support until later?
Okay. So then that way we're really only 1 month.
Okay.
Yeah, with that, we won't be holding it up at all.
No, and that's what they can judge what your feedback was like as well. You know, they were here. They're not just hearing something second or third hand. And I just don't want you to do anything that you don't feel comfortable doing it. If you think you want more time for citizen input, well, that's the consequences they need to realize for changing up the concept. So I want to make sure you guys are more comfortable with it. I'm not as worried about their needs.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
And to go down through here, of course, our minutes, we'll put any changes to Jennifer at the same time.
Mr. Mayor, do you just want to go back to our original concept, which was if anyone had any particular issues that they wanted to discuss, I'm prepared to answer anything. If there's anything that's from a staff member who's not available this evening, we'll make sure they're at the Tuesday meeting.
Okay.
That's reminder number 1. It is Tuesday, not Monday.
Correct, because of the holiday. Right.
Mr. Mayor, Mike Vanderpool's going to be covering that meeting because I have a conflict that evening.
For Tuesday. Okay. All right.
I'm sure you were.
I do have a question on the zoning administrator.
Yes.
The zoning effects amendment. I think it was under discussion. Talked about, I think, regular reporting.
Page 43.
43 in the packet. I guess just an overall question for you.
Sure.
So you're going to be making these decisions.
Would not be me. It would actually be I'd point our town planner.
Town planner?
Yes.
Is this the one where you were working with the Public Facilities Committee? Or is that?
No, I believe that's another one. What the issue is originally our town planner, Marshawn Schneider, was basically, when he was hired as a part-time, he was also delegated and basically appointed at the time as a zoning administrator, but he had limited authority as to how to be the zoning administrator. And currently the way it's set up is anything that a zoning administrator typically would do actually has to come through the council. Because the council, by definition in our zoning ordinance, is the zoning administrator at this time. So the goal is really to move more of the administrative operations and procedures under the zoning administrator and remove the council as a zoning administrator. That has several benefits. I actually defer even to our attorney, Mr. Krim, if he'd like to add anything to it. But one of the things that the zoning administrator is the council. That immediately eliminates one appeal opportunity for the applicant and requires all appeals to go directly to the BZA because you're the one making the decision at this point. Whereas if it's your zoning administrator works because you've tasked him with that work. He's basically enforcing the zoning ordinance. That's essentially what it is. Currently, although we have transitioned to allow more interpretation and stuff, he doesn't have the authority really to make any kind of interpretations. He makes strong recommendations, but even those come through. That's one of the reasons why the issues with the development over signature companies and site plan and everything, that all comes through the council. Well, the council rendered a decision, and now it's going to the BZA. Whereas he actually in the past could actually have wrote that determination and gotten the ball started. We've gotten faster through the process for the applicant. Really, is really what it came down to.
And if I may say, in the past, in my experience, too many things came to council that were more political, and people would come before us and plead their case or whatever, and the council could be swayed to, oh yeah, we'll do that this time. Whereas going through a zoning administrator, that granted they can petition council, but most of the time they're not going to.
Correct.
Because is there not a cost for that, doing that?
Yeah,
petition
if you
council.
want a zoning determination, there's a cost to the
Right, but still, it takes us out of the picture of doing the black and white stuff. We're still in the picture for what's the word I'm looking for?
Mr. Mayor, if I might, the way that the zoning normally works is that the council determines the zoning on each parcel, and it writes the text of the zoning ordinance so that you set the rules, and then you have somebody who enforces those rules for you, and that is typically the zoning administrator. And so the zoning administrator writes notices of violation if other efforts to get compliance fail. They write a notice of violation. They can write interpretations so that people can be guided by their consistent application of the zoning ordinance. There are a number of peculiarities. You've touched on a couple there where everything has to come to council for action. Another one would be if somebody appeals something from the ARB, it comes to you, and that's. But you're also the zoning administrator. So how does that work exactly? Because typically the zoning administrator is working directly with the property owner, and then something goes to the ARB with the zoning administrator's recommendation. But you're the zoning administrator, but you're also the appeal body from the ARB. So it's just it's a very odd situation. I'm not aware of any other locality that had this particular thing.
Mr. Mayor, the BZA, who comprises of the BZA?
The BZA is appointed by the circuit court. You nominate people to serve on the BZA, and that is a body that needs to hear appeals from the zoning administrator's notices of violation.
Right. Did we get those back yet? We know we sent in names several months ago, and then there was some hiccup that maybe they weren't.
I'm not exactly sure. To the best of my knowledge, I think we did.
Okay.
But
I think there were two separate occasions. Or
when Jen returns, I think Jen will know the answer to that.
Great.
Definitely, being the clerk of the town. Yes, and it's also one of the other things to just point out with this whole process. This really all you're doing is you're saying, yes, we acknowledge this is an issue, and you're sending it forth to go through the proper process. Proper process would be having a public hearing to amend the zoning ordinance and to create the zoning text amendment.
Okay.
We could do that with a joint public hearing in October with the Planning Commission. But I think you're all sending the message that this is the direction you want to go in. Just to kind of reference one other issue, one of the things you've been wanting to do is turn a lot more of the. Right now, the way it's set up is there's 7 of you all acting as zoning administrator for the town, whereas you have one professional who actually studied this and practices this on a day-to-day basis, both with his full-time position and with his position here. So it would make be much more appropriate to have that function within the town. Now, with that being said, you actually can appoint someone. Like if you had someone on the Planning Commission, if you didn't have anyone professionally, that was a planner or basically be the enforcer of your zoning ordinance. I think we're a little bit beyond that point where now, with the growth of the town, that you would actually probably have someone that's a professional planner that would act as your zoning administrator / counsel.
Okay.
I'm totally in agreement with having it go in that direction. I just want to be clear. What is the course of action if someone disagrees with that individual, with our zoning administrator? If they appeal to who?
The Board of Zoning Appeals.
Well, they'd appeal to the council first, would they not, if the council's not the zoning administrator?
Yes, taking into account that we're not the zoning
That's what I
administrator.
thought I heard.
Right. If you are not the zoning administrator, that is not the route of appeal. The route of appeal that's set forth in the statute is from the zoning administrator to the Board of Zoning Appeals. You all would be kept informed, and obviously if you were unhappy with the action of the zoning administrator, you can direct him through the manager to work it out, and we'll fix that problem as a CapEx.
And that gets to my question why I raised it initially, because I was concerned about safeguards that decisions weren't made arbitrarily, because it's not about the individual, it's the position, whoever is in that position. So we could have a very good person in there now. In the future, it could be somebody different who may do things arbitrarily.
Right. That's the same with any of our positions.
Well, I understand, but I saw it here.
Yes, and that's the same thing that I'm trying. How do we protect ourselves from, someone having that much authority?
You would have, just as we do with the other staff reports, that person could write a report to you every month. These are the notices of violation I sent out. These are the letters of correction that I sent out. These are the issues that are going to be coming forward for site plan, minor site plan approval, and typically those are handled at the planning commission level, but we can also keep the council informed about all of the zoning actions because there's not going to be that long a list.
Okay. So right now, we're the BZA.
No. You're the zoning administrator.
But we're the zoning administrator, but we don't have a BZA.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, we do. You've always had a BZA.
Okay.
I was on the BZA for 5 years, never had a meeting.
And that's what I'm asking. Who do we have now that's
Right.
on the BZA?
We have a membership. They are, I don't know their names, but they've been notified that we have a meeting coming up next month.
Jennifer, did we get the responses back from the court notifying who they selected for the BZA appointments? We had two separate ones.
We got the responses, and Nicole has gone and sworn in with Ms. McQuigg.
Robert Day?
Heard back from Robert Day.
Okay.
He picked up his orders.
Oh, good. Okay.
And Robert
Day and
Nicole is sworn in and ready to go.
Robert Day of Jockey Club member?
Yes.
Okay.
So I picked up his paperwork a couple weeks ago.
Good guy.
Yeah. He's a reappointment. I think he served.
He's a reappointment.
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing I have looking at this, is there any way to take the department reports, put them ahead of the agenda so we don't bog these people down like Holly, Sherry? Because we get hung up on the agenda, and these people are sitting around for an hour and a half.
Right.
Can we just flip-flop 6 and 7?
We spoke about that, but of course, how does that mess with your system there?
I can flip-flop it, but we put the resident on the back burner. The agenda items are the resident items.
I think it's residents first,
Residents first.
then the department reports.
Okay.
However, I think you all discussed, if there's no one here, you can decide at that meeting. I think
Yes.
the motion said, decide at that meeting. If you don't have people here, take your department reports first. But
Okay.
etiquette, I think we're gonna keep it.
Okay.
Right.
I just don't want to pull people up that have a 2-minute presentation
Right.
while they sit for an hour and a half.
Right.
We tend
Well, I
to
think-
go long.
Not to interrupt, but just to keep it, I guess, somewhat informal, the issue is sometimes, in a lot of cases, you're going to have agenda items that other staff members are going to be involved with anyway. So when you're going through the course of the work session, what you could do is you basically just, go through and take the department reports, and at that time, they could address, I can inform staff, address any of the other issues you've got coming up to agenda. Action. I mean, if that would that mess us up from an order procedure here in the work session? Okay. So in other words, like for example, if Marchant was here, and stuff, he'd give his planner's report, and then
Yeah.
he would say, I'm also working on item A and C, and so he would talk about A, ask you any questions. If you all didn't have any questions, Marchant's done for the evening. By Holly's next up, so forth and so on. And that, it's a learning process, and we're still learning.
Not to forget our consent area of the agenda too, so that, we could put and determine the consent items after the work session of what you feel that is not going to be, and then we have that opportunity to remove them at the meeting, to take them out.
Or, Mr. Mayor, if I could suggest this, you could also just have department reports be a written report that you receive, and unless a council member wants to hear from the departmental person, they wouldn't need to appear. So you would let Jen know the day of that you're going to want that person to be at the meeting. Otherwise, they're excused from the meeting. Because there's no really strong reason for them to be present if there are no questions for it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Just make it more efficient. Okay.
So that was all you had about the zoning administrator. Was there any other issues that jumped out?
Any other?
Management.
Talk about.
Okay. You want me to talk about that now?
I knew that was coming. I'm just seeing.
All right. Management of leases. Has the Public Facilities Committee had a chance to discuss that? No.
We have not. No.
Okay.
Essentially,
page 53.
Can we get page numbers on this? No, but on the agenda page here.
To kind of refer back.
It would help.
Because looking up the 3AA doesn't really match any 3AA.
Well, not on the work session.
Right. So,
It's an attachment. It will at the regular meeting, but
okay. Maybe just put where the page would start. Just can you free type into?
I could probably re-type it.
Yeah. Maybe like A, and then you could put 53, and then zone administrator. I don't know.
We're moving to iPad soon anyway, right?
It's just unique with the work session because keep in mind today's a meeting, so we have a meeting agenda.
Right.
The attachment is one attachment, the work session, the agenda for next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of
So the
complicated.
attachment is the whole upload, so numbering wise, it's one item on this agenda.
Just trying to figure out a flip.
I'll talk to them and see. We're
way
so unique with how we do our work session.
if I can address just the management leases issue, a lot of this actually comes up. The biggest thing is this is just another example of trying to institute a policy, once again, that designed to make our lease process a little bit smoother, opposed to bringing all decisions to council. Leases would primarily be discussed at the public facilities level in general, and unless there was unique issues that would be need to be discussed at the full council level. And otherwise, it would basically, the facilities committee, as a representative of the council, would basically just authorize the manager to proceed forward. And so this would also have to be after legal review of all these. So it's not like an issue where the town manager has got full regard and
you'd still have the committee to answer.
then I'll be all for all leases.
You'd still have to
The
have
leases are the council's
to
leases
sign off.
that they have. The issue more is just the process we have to go through to do it. The best case and example is XTS, our tenant upstairs, is ready to move next door. They want to go in September 1st. I can't execute the lease, which is basically a mirror image of the lease they had over here. I have to wait till council takes action. So it's not even a matter of just bringing it to David and say, David, can you authorize this lease? As the mayor, representing the council, I've got to bring it to the whole entire council. So this policy really is geared at just saying, can we make the process a little bit smoother? We're still very much in the know. The council's still very much aware. And if anything, if there's works that may come out of the lease, then by all means, I say bring it to the entire council. So once again, I will actually compliment Councilman Passanello for this. It's a draft policy. So there's nothing is in stone by any means.
So we'll look at it.
All
see if
these are
there's any
draft policies,
changes that we need to make. The only thing I would add to it is maybe like a checklist, so that way you have a place for the attorney to sign off and, hey, it's run through the public facilities. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I read the policy. It's a good policy. You got checks and balances in there. It's great. And I like the addition of professional realtor service related to fair market rates. I think that's important. So,
Yep. Okay. Any other, as we go through there, any other things that anybody wants to bring?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Attorney contact policy,
Yep. Page 58 on the bottom.
56, 57, 58, that area. I'd like to propose the mayor and vice mayor on this, so that we, not just in the absence, but if something comes up that somebody's uncomfortable going to one with the mayor, that there is an alternate source.
Very understandable. I have no objection.
Just as Martin knows, I call him every day, spend lots of money. He rarely hears from me, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Any objection?
What are you proposing to add where?
that it's not just
The mayor, it can be the mayor. And
This is town council bullet one.
Policy.
On page 59, town council, any place that says mayor would say mayor.
I think
and
that
vice mayor.
was what we discussed.
There was a discussion on that, but it was never formalized. It was just somebody suggested it. It might have been you.
Yeah. It is supposed to be with the vice mayor.
Yeah.
That's why it has draft number.
Yep. Okay. Not a problem.
I will.
Anything else on that one?
I will make a mention. After Martin had reviewed it, he suggested actually two things to eliminate the citizens portion of the draft policy. He had actually, Martin, I'm going to do it to you again. You actually said something quite brilliant about you should put in a preamble, kind of defining like who you actually work for.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we actually got that in. If maybe we can put our heads together and determine that once again.
And there was another change that I wanted to make
And then
as well.
the other change was eliminating bullet number 3 under town council.
It just duplicates number 2.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Sure.
could ask one more question. Very quickly, police department. I understand there's got to be a level of discretion with the attorney between the chief and town attorney. To what extent is the manager involved in some of that discussion, and should he be advised of some of that discussion?
At this time, the chief answers directly to council, so it's not a pass-through at all for the manager. If that were to change in the future, then this policy should be amended to reflect a new chain of command.
Yeah, I agree. In the past, when we delegated some of the chief's authority to town manager, that would make sense. But now, town manager has no oversight over the police department, which is normally in this organization.
It's not in his job description. It's not anywhere else that I'm aware of.
Okay. Any other thoughts or concern about that? Move on. All right.
And I do presume that our committees, our boards, planning commission, ARB, they would follow this procedure in going through the town manager.
Once
Yes, they would. And if this was passed, the town attorney would know this procedure, so if they called, he would redirect them to the appropriate method to contact them.
Or was that appointed officials?
Yes. No. That he was just making sure that that's what it meant.
Okay.
Because since we appoint them, they're under appointed officials.
Of course.
All right.
We could build that bridge with the savings.
Any other thoughts as we're going through this?
Page 62, Town Council Pay Structure Policies.
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to emphasize to everyone that I personally took this upon myself to take all the information that I'd seen and the whole page worth of how we might be able to do this and try to condense it into the most simplistic two-sentence resolution. And basically, all it says is all elected and appointed officials who get paid by the meeting will be able to get paid for no more than 3 meetings in a calendar month. And any meetings after that is unpaid. The reason I chose that is that for appointed officials is the ARB and a planning commission. Almost never do they have 3 meetings or more than 3 meetings in a month. So this will really not impact them. So we're not really, yes, we're limiting them, but on a once in a blue moon, it might limit them. This is really only directed at us, limiting us to just 3 paid meetings a month. And none of this, after the 3rd meeting, you get 50% and all this rigmarole. This is very simple, very straightforward. It helps cut the funding back for the amount we have to pay. It's simple for Jen to administer. And this gives us the opportunity, unlike in past councils, where we won't have to worry about calling a special meeting. If a special meeting needs to happen, we'll do it because we don't have to worry about, oh, geez, it's going to look bad because we're getting another $100. If we need a meeting, we can call it without worrying about it anymore and get the job done in a more efficient manner.
So can we
that's my
adjust?
thought process.
I think the other thing is it also really kind of make you take assessment about whether or not it is needed for a special meeting. At the same time, it may not. If you need the meeting, you'll have the option to have the meeting. I don't disagree, but on the flip side, it might actually make you take stock on sometimes what exactly constitutes a reason for a special meeting.
Right. But there are times a 5-minute meeting is necessary.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, no,
I came in several times in the last 2 years for a 5-minute meeting and got paid $100.
For
And that did not feel quite right. I didn't turn it back in, but it still didn't feel quite right.
So
there's nothing that...
Well, I have a question on that, though. Because for someone who's the chair for the Planning Commission or the ARB, where does that fall in?
All your meetings would, it's as a, if I'm not mistaken, the way this reads, it's as you serve on the board.
Okay, so
in other
that's
words,
like our 3rd meeting or
No,
whatever.
that would not.
Oh, it doesn't
you going to
constitute a
ARB
third
would not be a 3rd meeting. It's
Oh.
how you serve as on the ARB, because you are serving the ARB separately from the council.
That probably should specify.
I think you should.
I intended this to be any meeting that council
really?
would attend, but, I mean, we can...
Because, I mean, I already have 3 a month.
Exactly.
I mean,
Well,
most of us
I
do.
have 4 a month.
Right, I was going to say, most of us do.
So, that's okay.
So the council could adopt a resolution to adjust, obviously, lessen the amount of pay for their current position, or is that something
Yeah, you can reduce your pay, and you can't increase it unless it's going to take effect after an election of the body.
Right, okay.
So you could pass something tonight increasing your pay effective July 1st of 2016.
So in theory, we could actually all just take $1 a meeting.
Places do, yeah.
In theory, yes, but does our... I believe there's a dollar amount in our charter that could you not go below that? It's not $100.
No, there is a state law provision that says, notwithstanding any charter to the contrary, the councils can set their own wages.
And what is our last?
Our charter says like $100
It does.
a year, I think.
Oh, it does.
A year.
A year?
Oh.
Or a meeting?
Can you just double check that?
It has been altered. Is what I thought it was.
Well, it has been on the charter. I mean, there's been resolutions that have increased it, like...
Right, but like I said, it's not relevant because there's a state law that it was $100 per year, and the mayor can receive up to $500 per year. But again, there's a state code provision that says, notwithstanding any charter provision to the contrary.
Charter provision.
Yes, which this is. So the state law trumps this. Normally, the charter trumps the state law, but not if the General Assembly uses the magic words, notwithstanding any charter provision to the contrary. This time, the General Assembly used the magic words, notwithstanding any charter provision to the contrary. So the state law trumps the charter.
Okay.
But, I mean, this fits us back close to our budget. It's not exact because this won't go into effect until the soonest would be September. And then we'll have 2 months of higher than normal outtakes. But it brings us back into a steady path as opposed to who knows what it'll be at the end of the year. Now we can budget and know exact or close to exactly or the maximum it will be.
I like it, except I think that the portion that says unpaid should be in bold. I like it.
I have no problem.
say the minimum.
I wanted to make sure that people understood that
Everyone's going to have at least
anything
3
after
meetings
that's
to
not paid,
accomplish
even though it's
the
not
minimum
necessary to
for
put that in. I want it to be clear.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well done.
So do you know how we budgeted for this physical year? Did we?
Yeah, it's like 21.
1,007 something.
Was that
You're-
X
I'll be
amount?
I'll go ahead and tell you, you're going to be over budget regardless. Somehow the stipend wasn't not included into that, and the
We
current
had
track.
professionals who looked at that. Are you serious?
It was a little under.
Hey, absolutely. I'm allowed
No,
to
that's
say
fine.
that.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See you later. Thank you.
Well, the long and short is
But
that
it was based
part of-
on-
yeah.
What wasn't formulated was multiple meetings.
Right.
Which we had for the last 2 years. So there's, it wasn't something that I could
Okay.
change through trying to get a realistic budget in there and the people I talked to, because they weren't going to be around anymore, so they didn't care.
Okay.
The only question I have is, do we need to specify that elected and appointed officials who get paid by the meeting will only be paid? So it's just that's just how many meetings you get.
No matter what
That was
kind of
my
meeting you
intention.
attend.
Okay.
Do we want to change it?
No more than
that's
the
fine.
maximum.
Okay.
The
And it just
maximum
keeps it simple,
Very good.
Plain.
to the point,
Yes.
2 sentences.
The maximum amount.
Maximum.
Right.
I mean,
Then you had
maximum.
one meeting. then
If you only have one meeting, you only get paid for one meeting.
Yep.
And therefore, we could, we know what the maximum outlay would be in a year,
Yes.
but it could be less.
Okay. All right. Moving on. The other. Treasury report. Yes, sir.
Just 1, 2, 3, 5th bullet down.
Yep.
The only thing you might want to add to that is that we're going to be sending the bills out for December, what was it, 1st or 5th? 5th? Right. But that we're also saying that if you don't pay until March 1st, you're not going to be penalized just for the first year.
Just to get in the cycle.
Yeah, to get out of the cycle.
Oh, right.
Just want to confirm
Yes.
that.
I'm okay with that.
All right.
Was that in the original ordinance that you passed? Because we could do a quick ordinance for your adoption next Tuesday that would accomplish that, and then there's no question about it.
Okay.
That would be a record, and we would just say for tax year 2014, tax payments normally due on December 5th will only accrue late fees and interest beginning. What was that date? March 1st. March 1st, 2015. Okay.
March 1st is the due date. When would it go actually late? When would we normally accrue?
March 2nd. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
So we're sending them out earlier, and there's going to be a little something in the
Right.
envelope.
Okay.
The next bullet, I'm just curious as to why the return to the town was so much lower. I understand the property value dropped, but where do we stand in line of other creditors?
Well,
And why wouldn't we get the full recompense for that?
nobody got the full payment of their taxes on that property. The property did not bring enough at tax sale to pay the taxes, and so the way it works in any sale of an asset is you pay the expenses of the sale first, and then whatever is left, the net amount, is distributed pro rata based on tax years. So we did it each tax year. The oldest tax year, went first. County had a couple more tax years unpaid than we did, I think. So, we looked at the math. The county did it correctly. They were originally going to just give themselves all the money and us whatever is left over. And I said, no, we're not doing that. So we got.
You earned your paycheck that day.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how that came out to be. Now there is it's not actually quite a write-off, but it is uncollectible. So maybe it is a write-off in that sense. It is not released. The National Capital Christian Broadcasting Corporation still owes that money, but they're a defunct organization, so there's no assets to go after.
Okay. So maybe we'll have a draft resolution maybe to waive that up. Brian?
This is the first time in now. I would tend to say they'll probably come in October.
Okay.
There's
All
no
right.
rush on that.
All right. Great.
We are in August, and the deadline for the streetscape is in August, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this Friday.
This Friday, yeah.
And
They're not going to make it. I'm
No
gonna let you
way.
know.
From what Holly was telling me earlier, they say they will be substantially complete, meaning sidewalks and street and all that will be done by Haymarket Day, but they won't be complete, meaning benches, lights, trash cans until, I think she said the 5th or the 6th of October.
What I can't understand is they know, according to what we've discussed before, they know that there is not a stipend.
Liquidated damages.
There's a damage here. There's a
They know
liquidated damage. They know
They
about
know
this. Do they have something up their sleeves to work themselves out of that?
No.
They have not, according to her, they have not submitted any request for
Delay. Exception.
exception.
Is there a deadline for that?
There was only one
I have
person
no
out
idea.
there today.
I guess they can do
Beautiful day.
at any time, they
I
can
think it would
request
be
anything.
before the end contract ended.
Right.
So do they know that there's over $800,000 left to be paid out on this project,
Yes,
and
sir.
they're willing to give up that's $1,000 per day?
Yes.
That's
Yes,
correct.
sir.
I don't know, I'm sure they know it, I don't know what their thought process is. They might have something they think they're going to be able to.
In your opinion, Mr. Manager, is there anything that they could ever come back to us with to say it was our fault, why the delay was there?
No. This is
That's
why
more
we've
like-
been.
It's a Martin question.
Well, and
We might want to.
we might want to do that in closed session, exactly. But because you asked a very broad question, is there anything that we could possibly conceive of where they might be able to bring forward a claim for delay? Of course, that. If you look at it that broadly, the question is how reasonable would their claims be, and that's a discussion for closed session.
Okay.
Since we're going to have a
Might have a closed session. Do we have a closed session this month?
You will need to hear a follow-up to the issue that we took up in last month's closed session
Okay.
with regard to a lease.
Okay.
I don't have that answer.
Which I'm recused from.
Can I hear it then?
I'm sorry.
Can I then hear this question at that closed session?
We need to announce. We would need to say what we're going into closed session.
Right. We would simply work.
And then I would
we could
want
add that as
that part.
specific legal matters requiring advice of counsel.
And so would that be first, and then I would leave?
That's
We can set that up.
yes. We will figure that out. But I would need to brief Mr. Vanderpool since he's going to be covering next week's meeting as to.
Second Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell him that.
And he'll be up to speed on that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, Brian?
One more thing.
I'm hoping you'll
Page,
do it.
no, but that's the second thing.
Okay.
74, I just want to commend Joe, what he says in the second paragraph under, the first paragraph under other. I really like reading stuff about the goal of the department is to present a unified front with regards to the town's interest. I just, it's nice to see that everybody's working together on staff. I think that you should be commended for that.
Okay. Good. Further things?
Mr. Finance Chair.
Well, do you want to start it? You're supposed to give me bullet points, but that's
Oh, well, I'm sorry, I got that. I totally forgot. At our finance committee meeting this month, don't feel too bad. I forgot to give myself bullet points, so I'm gonna have to wing it.
It's not on. We want to.
Yeah.
It's not on.
We are looking. It is. I believe it is in the minutes of the finance committee. However, what I was going to say is we were looking at the interim solution of having our current deputy clerk, who functions in a lot of aspects as the treasurer on a day-to-day basis. There are some aspects of that position that I think require a higher level, and we've actually contracted out to make sure we have a consultant to do that. However, the day-to-day operations is something that she's been doing for some time, and I think at this point we're at the point discretion of the finance committee, they believe, well, let's actually make this official. I know it was raised to us by our town clerk. We don't want to see this be one of those things where this is where we want to go, but then here we are a year later and they're continuing to do the same thing. So I believe finance committee is looking at saying, let's appoint our deputy clerk as our interim treasurer or acting treasurer. We could go either way. I did speak to our town attorney today saying what would be the best way for us to approach that, because being a small town, a small administration, we wear many hats. And in this particular case, I know the individual, Sherry Wilson, would prefer to keep wearing some of those hats with regard to working with building permits and doing some of the zoning issues, working with Marchand, as well as also doing some responsibilities that a deputy clerk typically has. However, it does make it, Martin has raised the issue, it makes it kind of a messy, if you will, to try to say that you're a treasurer who would be appointed by the council while at the same time being a deputy clerk who's managing me. What action, what component were they working in at that time? So I'm thinking what we're going to have to do is really look at that and basically come up with a different position title, which would be a catch-all.
And I think it needs to be very clear what the job description is, who supervises that person, and if it's on a council appointment, then how much authority have you delegated to the manager?
Thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a little bit different than what we talked about.
It grew just a little bit, but we got to watch out for these things.
Steve, you have any thoughts?
Yes, I mean, I think it's something that we should do. I mean, how we fine tune it and do it in an appropriate manner, we can work on whether or not we can do it in a week or whether or not it takes till the October meeting to finalize. That's okay. But I believe we're in sync that the Finance Committee doesn't believe that we need to interview and bring in a treasurer for this position. The type of work we do here, the amount of work we do here, 90% of it is probably already being done by this person, and we should formalize that position and move forward with it. It'd be an interim for maybe, I'm just guessing here, 3 to 6 months. We'll see how it goes before we make it permanent. But as was mentioned, the 10% of the time where we need a technical expert or something, we have somebody on call to assist us on an hourly basis. And that would be to the best interest of the town residents and our fiduciary responsibility to probably proceed in this manner.
There's another component, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Another component of this is a couple of components. Promoting from within, giving those who are here an opportunity to show what they can do. I think we also talked about training, necessary training, and that the individual would pursue training where necessary for areas where there may be some perceived weaknesses or not, to better themselves in representing the town as a treasurer. I think those were. And also, the fact of the matter is, going with an acting or an interim treasurer in many corporations where I've been, I think Steve has been, I mean, that's typically the progression. You will bring somebody in who's already doing the job, basically, and appoint them to that position as an acting or an interim, and give them the opportunity to sell themselves on the job, basically.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's important for you all to have a treasurer because that is a position that's recognized in the Code of Virginia. There are a number of tasks that can only be done by a treasurer, so you need to have somebody who fits that role so that they can make determinations about taxes that are owed and take the necessary collection items. So what I would suggest that you do is, at your meeting next week, go ahead and make an appointment for an acting or interim treasurer, and then direct staff to come back to you with whatever information you all feel is important. If there's going to be a performance evaluation, then you need to determine who's going to do that and how that will be handled and reviewed by council, presumably in closed session. and then you can make decisions based on the staffing needs of the town as to what to do next. And it's 3 months, 6 months. It sounds like a reasonable evaluation period.
Okay, all right.
What I recommend is, one, if you want to, if we can move forward with the acting this coming Tuesday, making that designation, and then I would say after that I would work with the Personnel Committee to finalize all the details.
Okay. When is the Personnel Committee going to meet again?
We haven't set that.
Okay.
Set that exactly, but we have a tentative date and time, certainly accelerate.
Right. Okay. All right.
If
Great.
we meet this week, you can get an extra $100.
Except aren't they on vacation?
Yeah.
Isn't it personnel?
Okay. Any other thoughts? Concerns?
Just a general question concerning the nominee for treasurer. Will she be able to do her present job as well as the job of a treasurer?
Well, just to make I'm glad you actually kind of brought that up, Councilman Morris. Just to make a little bit of a clarification, I'm just going to say it like it is. Actually, to be honest with you, it's Jen and Sherry really working together over the last years. I don't want to negate a lot of what Jen has done in this regard as well. And I think what it really comes down to is it's more of a matter of putting the person in that position. I mean, from my standpoint, I want to make sure that they can succeed. Our day-to-day operations would not require full-time in here. I think there are certain issues, but I think I see the ability to manage the different entities of your job. And if that became an issue, then we would address it. I think one of the concerns that Sherry may have, which is probably more for the Personnel Committee to talk about, is she just wants to make sure that it's not phasing her out of what she currently does, because she does like these other aspects of her job. That's the part that she likes about it. She likes being able to have these, be able to work on these different aspects. I'll be working with her quite frequently as well. Not that I'm a finance expert by any means, but what I'm trying to say is from the standpoint of keeping us motivated and getting the additional opportunities for training, put her in the situations to find out what it is that we do well now, where can we improve, what am I not doing, those kind of things. I think that's an important thing for us to put her into.
So let me try to understand this whole scope of what we're discussing here. In the past, before we even had a treasurer, the one who resigned recently, we've had the town clerk and her deputy used to do this work.
Correct.
And basically what we're doing now is formalizing and for the deputy clerk to kind of be the treasurer alongside what she's normally doing. So she has been doing this in the past. We're just making it formal.
I think in the past, I think councils for various different reasons, very legitimate reasons, they may have looked at the treasurer as being a little bit more of a higher credentialed individual, maybe more almost as I would call it. And this is my own take as a financial analyst, almost
forecaster.
As a forecast, these are all things that are very important for what we're doing or for what you're trying to do as a town. However, in the day-to-day operations, especially with a budget of around $3.5 million annually, it's one of those things, we're not quite at that stage yet. And so really what we need to concentrate ourselves on is what are we doing on the day-to-day basis? Are we being responsible for taxpayers' resources? Are we spending money wisely? Are we collecting our taxes as we are called to do? Those are the things that we're called to do. In a lot of ways, Sherry, and then I'd also say Jen have been doing that over the years. And so whenever they've brought in a treasurer, it's always been someone a little bit higher up. And they would do some of that stuff, but they also would do some of this other stuff, which in my own professional and personal opinion was really only a 5 to 10% portion of what you do on a day-to-day basis for a town our size. In most jurisdictions, a town our size, typically what you do see is you see a clerk and a treasurer, and they're kind of the administrative office staff usually. It may, as we continue to grow, there will be additional needs that we may have that can take a little bit of pressure off of them with these things. And then as time moves on, I think we would transition some of the things that Jen does, because there's other things that I know Jen could do and enjoys doing around here. You please correct me if I'm wrong. that she currently does that maybe we can move over to that position. So we've been going through this process. I think we're kind of at a time of excitement and transition at the same time here in the office.
Okay. Good. All right. Very good.
So let me just. So what I'm hearing is more the accounting and the bookkeeping and that sort of thing. Really, it's just really what we're talking about. And as far as like budgeting and all of that, we're going to pull somebody else in that might be able to do some forecasting.
Could you, Jen, would you mind commenting on what our consultant basically?
No, it's be very technical accounting, higher level accounting.
Right.
You know, making sure our, like if we had a write-off of a debt or uncollectible debts, she would handle that on her books. Yeah, it's more technical stuff accounting-wise. Now, I will go ahead and add in my ultimate goal. There's a lot of accounting that I still do that I think that she needs to start doing.
Okay.
I don't think it's appropriate to go ahead and title that without taking it all. And that's where I kind of think that it's more job than it just doing what she's currently doing. I kind of think that there's a lot more this could expand on.
That gets back to Martin's point about the job description.
That's what I was just going to say. We need to make sure we have that defined.
Which we need to do. We need to go back to the person who can correct.
Good.
And this gives us 3 to 6 months to get that right.
To hammer it out.
Get the buy-in
I just want to make
and
sure
all that before we make
I
it.
was hearing it right. So.
And I like the whole concept. You're promoting from within. You're looking for this individual, and if we have to bring someone in later on to fill a position, it would be a lesser position, and promote from within and give her the opportunity to excel at a better position.
And that's really what I think is what the goal is here, because there is quite a bit that Jen does still do, and I wouldn't disagree with what she was saying as well. Because her up saying it again, but what I'm getting at is like both in Jen and Sherry's case, they have a whole lot of institutional knowledge, and there's a whole lot of history that's behind there. And as we are moving and transitioning into what we need to shape ourselves into, I think this is a desired interest. I know that there's still delight and interest in doing the other things. I think if you take some of the smaller things away, then it builds in enough time to inherit the others and still be able to do this. But I think even she understands. There's going to be some.
I'm sure the salary for the treasurer was in the budget that was passed, so we'll be saving some money.
Yes, there was.
Good.
Okay. If no
Make
further
it for the meetings.
further comments, then we'll see everybody.
Yes, I have one adjustment.
Tuesday.
I thought we were bringing in Cox for tonight.
Yeah.
I did have a point, but.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.